All right. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Let's see who else is
I can hear
muted.
you.
For whatever reason, I could not get anything to work tonight. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing well.
Doing good.
I think y'all can see some of the lights in the background. Or no, that's my clothesline. Okay. Well, I got here today and started setting up stuff, and I hadn't been gone, but I guess I've been gone exactly a month. So I got here today, and everything was fairly uneventful, and workers were gone when I got here, so had a fairly peaceful afternoon, just unpacking stuff and putting it where it belonged, and I like to get that done. And then I got on the back porch for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and just sit out here and did nothing but watch the birds. I got about a big old ream of bananas hanging off the porch. The Hideo usually takes care of that before I get here. I eat a lot of bananas, but nothing big is coming. We're doing the tomorrow. We do like an inventory of what coffee we have, all the different processes, and then Friday we're going to start putting all the coffee into burlap sacks, and then weigh it all out. It has to weigh 151.8 pounds, so we'll get everything all weighed out, and hopefully by the end of next week the container will be here, and then we'll put in the container. But right now we don't have a ship, and so it'll sort of sit in the warehouse once it's loaded until somebody finds us a slot on the next ship. So we're still looking at like 6 weeks, something like that, before it's in the States. But hopefully it'll start the ball rolling anyway. And I think Ranger Dan is on. I loaded your coffee yesterday. You should have gotten like an email or something with your bill of lading.
Yeah, I got it.
So I think Julia
I'm
sent that
roasting
out to
up everything
everybody.
else that I got left over.
And you do a lot of flavored coffee, Dan?
Yeah, we've got 31 flavors, and then you mix all the flavors. There's over 200 combinations.
Man. No, I think we do 6. We do Jamaica Me Crazy, Rum Popo, Southern Pecan, Caramel Rum Crunch. And then, of course, in the wintertime or October, we'll start doing pumpkin spice, pumpkin latte, and some stuff like that. But we don't do a whole lot. But we had to because people were asking for it. And so we've been getting ours from Flavor Dynamics. I'm not
Flavor
sure where they're out of.
Dynamic. Yeah. We get
It's,
ours from Nature's Flavors.
We were getting it from Coffee Flavor Labs or something like that.
So, if you don't mind me asking, how do you apply the flavor to the beans?
Well, I like to do it when it's hot, but I was just sort of doing it willy-nilly, but then I started reading the instructions one day, and some of them have different flash points on them. And so the one I was doing the other day, the Jamaica Me Crazy, it's got like a 105-degree flash point. So if you can put less flavoring on it. And so I'm not a big fan of flavored coffee. I love the smell of it. And a lot of days I'll crack open a bucket of caramel rum crunch and set it in front of the air conditioner, just so when people walk in, the smell is in the air. But I'm not a big, drink. I drink it all just to taste it, but I still like the regular coffees. Right now I'm drinking my Marciesa. And I don't put any flavorings, but like I'll go to the dollar store and they got these sea salted caramel chocolate bars, I'll eat a little bit of that with my coffee, but I never put in sugar or anything like that. But if I had to pick a coffee, it would probably be the one called Rum Popo, because Rum Popo is like a Honduran drink, or it might be a Central American drink, but they serve it here, and it's coffee with it's sort of like eggnog. It's eggnog with a little bit of coffee and 3 shots of rum. And so I didn't realize that it had any rum in it. And we were at a party there in Marcala, and I went through about 3 of them. And when I got up to go to the bathroom, I realized that something was wrong. I didn't know if I was having a stroke or what, but 3 cups, I'd basically had 9 shots of rum, and it was good stuff. I liked it. And so when I was looking on one of the ingredient, or like a shopping list there at Flavor Dynamics, and I saw that Rum Popo, I ordered a bottle of it. And of course, it doesn't have any rum in it, but it tastes similar to what I had. But it was pretty good. It's sort of eggnog, a little bit of coffee, and a bunch of rum. But you have
Flavor
to do it the
Dynamics.
market. Yeah, Flavor Dynamics. And I can get Ash, what in the crap? I can get Julia to look up their address and stuff, but you might be able to just Google them.
Yeah, I'll just Google them and see what I can find. We've been using Nature's Flavors and Watkins, believe it or not, just from Menards and stuff. And what we do is, for the whole bean, we'll just warm it up a little bit with a hair dryer. You just take the beans, warm them up, get them, to where they feel warm, and then put in 8 ounces or 8 milliliters per 12 ounces of flavor of coffee. So we went and bought these little, what do they call them?
Almost like kid medicine syringe.
Yeah, syringes. So we bought them, and we just put 8 milliliters per 12 ounces, just squirt it over the top, mix it through so that everything looks like it's moist, put it in the bag and seal it up. And then for the ground, we actually grind the coffee and then put it in a big bowl like this. And then we do the same way. We 8 mil to 12 ounces and just mix it in real good till there's no more clump, and then bag it up, seal it, and let it sit. And then it's been a real big hit.
No, we mix. I do it in the concrete mixer, but we do 6 ounces to 20 pounds.
And they got this one's banana nut bread. Going out to the guy tomorrow.
I've seen that one on there, and I've been tempted. Flavor Dynamics will send you some little 1 ounce bottles of samples. So I've been tempted to check that one out, because here
that's a big hit.
Well, on the farm we have 2,500 banana trees, so we do a lot of stuff with bananas, and so we make banana bread all the time here on the farm. And so it's easy to make. It's fairly cheap. It doesn't taste like the banana bread we have in the States, but the ingredients are a little bit different, and everything's a lot different. Your altitude is a big difference when you're cooking. And then recently I changed out the electric stove with a gas stove, so that made it a little harder to cook. Everything's in Celsius and it's gas, so you don't get a real good reading. But no, I love banana bread, so I might try that one. But I usually mix up, the smallest batch I mix up is like 5 pounds. I'll do 1.5 ounces to 5 pounds. And that makes the bean pretty oily. But now, Garrett, you haven't been on the podcast before, have you?
No, I haven't. First time.
Okay. What do you roast on?
So I've got a Beemore, the old 1600 plus.
Okay. Well, I think Bill has got 2 Beemores and fresh roast, and I don't know, he's starting to collect roasters. That's going to be his new hobby.
Hobby. I don't know if I'd say hobby. Maybe my downfall. Maybe.
I did
That-
have to replace the afterburner on my B-More after a few years. I've had it for I think 5 years, and I kind of felt like it was maybe taking a little longer or something was off. And I read about the afterburner and looked, and I'm like, yep, that's not firing. And it was easy enough to order directly and change out. So they're great machines.
Yeah, they seem like they're very easy. I had one for a while, and Bill's got mine now, and I would just throw in 12 ounces, tell it that it had 16 ounces in it, and hit the button and go in the house. And the next morning when I came out, the coffee was roasted, cooled down, and it's just so easy to roast with it.
Yeah.
And the hard part is trying to get profiles and stuff. But I guess with the Plus, you can manipulate things a little more. I think I just added all the time in I could and just walked away from it. And so I was always tickled with the roast that came out of it. And
My problem is I'm in Phoenix, and so I don't want to roast inside because even with the afterburner, if I put it in the bathroom with the fan on, there's still so much smoke. The bathroom smells like coffee roasting for a week. So I have it on a screen patio. But in the summertime here in Phoenix, like it'll be 9 o'clock at night and it'll still be 90 something degrees out. So I'm roasting, trying to get my beans to cool down in a giant electric oven that doesn't want to cool down anyway. So it's like as soon as I hit cool, it's open. It's use hot pads to take that chaff tray out, and I've got a leaf blower to try and cool it down as quickly as I can. So then, of course, chaff is everywhere. But even then, the ambient temperature's in the 90s, so it takes a while to cool. But,
well, I stuck mine in the window. I've got a roaster called the Hucky 500, and so I would just take the little I don't know what you call it, the little drum out of the B-More, and I would dump the coffee into the cooler on my Hucky, and it has its own exhaust system. So I could just hit the exhaust fan on the Hucky, and it would suck a lot of the B-More smoke out. But then it'll cool the coffee down in about a minute and a half. And they both have the same capacity. Isn't the max 12 ounces on the B-More?
it says a pound. I only do about half a pound or 12 ounces maybe. What do you do, Bill?
Yeah, I don't go much more than half a pound in it. I mean, it just takes incredibly too long if you go more than that. I find so, especially after I got that fresh roast. Now I'm just spoiled. So it just goes way too fast. So if you've never used one, Garrett, let me just tell you, don't walk away from it.
Okay.
I usually have my daughter roasting with me, and we sit out there and chat and have daddy-daughter time and everything. And I got about 3.5 to 4 minutes in on the fresh roast on the same size of roast as I do on the B-More, and it was already yellow and turning into brown at that point. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't talk. I can sit here and watch this because I'm not used to it going that fast.
Is it the 800?
Yeah, I've got the 800 with the factory extension tube on it. So
what's the capacity on that with the extension?
I've heard 10 on it, unless you go with the Razzo extension, like the I don't know what you call it, the mod, I guess you could say, that the guy makes, and they supposedly can get 12, but I've seen some people say they've had some issues with 12 not moving, like the beans don't move enough in it. So I haven't tried more than 8 at this point. So
yeah, I'd be pretty happy with 8. I went back and forth between the fresh roast and the B-More when I was looking, and a buddy of mine had been using the B-More, and it was the capacity that kind of sold me. But then after I started using it, I realized I still probably need to stick to about half a pound just to feel like it's not baking.
Well, I learned very quick from that guy, from wonderful Ashley up there, that if it only does 8 or 10 ounces, but it does it that quick, you could do a pound faster than you can on a B-More. So
that's a good point.
And it cools down. I mean, the B-More cooling is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It doesn't cool. I mean, I don't know why they even call it. I think it's just a buffer zone between loads or something on there. But the fresh roast will actually blow not cold air, but at least cooler air, and and will cool it down pretty quickly. I'm still thinking about getting a cooling tray like off of Amazon or something, just to see if it would do it faster. But I don't have Phoenix weather, but it's hot enough sometimes. That's for sure.
I
So.
did buy a small little cooling tray that's basically like about the size of an offering plate with a screen on the bottom and a fan that kind of, underpowered, but it works. The problem for me was just, I take out the chaff tray and that's fine, but it was trying to actually take out the drum
Yeah.
without burning myself.
Yeah.
And then open it before it's like, singeing the beans from the contact with the metal. And, after a couple times of that, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the leaf blower for now.
Yeah.
So,
I don't blame you.
But I think I might have to try one of the fresh roast.
Well, and there's the fresh roast does not have a big chaff mess either. I mean, it blows it up into that cap. The only problem that I've had, and I haven't tried it, the one that I bought was secondhand, and the top lid is separate from the bottom lid, so you open it up to get the chaff out of that top part of it. Well, the top lid came busted, like a quarter of it was missing off the side, so it was almost like a B-more, because when it was roasting, it would just blow up and blow out the top off that. But so I'm kind of tempted to see if, with it being whole, if it makes a big difference or not. But whenever I shut the machine off, chaff would just a little bit, not anywhere near as much as was actually up there, but a little bit would just rain down back onto the beans from the top. So I'm kind of curious to see if it makes a difference. But we're hijacking
Dan, you
your
look like
podcast.
you got a much bigger load roaster over there. What do you roast with, Dan?
All right, say that again. I didn't.
Dan looks like he's got a much higher capacity roaster. I was asking what he roasts with.
Oh, it's a 2K, and I can't tell you the name of it. It's some Chinese model of something that I bought on like Wish or something. No, I'm not. I don't know the name of it. Alibaba is where I got it, but it's a 2K roaster, and I've been on it since 11 o'clock this morning, and it's 9:30 right now.
Wow,
Man, that's a long day.
I only do that about once a week, though.
I heard there was a couple of coffee roasters and all got together about 2 years ago and just bouncing ideas and giving each other advice. And one of the guys said, if you're full time in the coffee business, when you get to the point where you're roasting 2 days a week, that's when you need to start having some help come in, because basically you roast 1 or 2 days a week, and then the other half the week you're either delivering or shipping or marketing, and I spend 20 hours a week marketing. Most of our coffee, we're sort of out in the country. We have some people come in and, through the door, but I bet we have 20 people a week on a good week come through the door. The majority of our coffee, we ship it out FedEx and post office. But yeah, I'd heard that 2 days was, was the mark between thinking about either upgrading the roaster or buying a separate one, and that's the beauty of doing like farmers markets. If you guys like Garrett and Bill, y'all are at that point where, y'all could get into a farmer's market and with a second, fresh roast or something, or a second B-more, you guys could get in there pretty easily.
Stick around, Garrett. You'll be pushed into it eventually. He just keeps shoving me that direction.
Well, I love being able to roast for friends and family. I mean, it makes perfect for, family get together or Christmas presents or things like that. But I haven't quite gone farmers market yet.
Well, a lot of times at the farmers market, I'll take my B-more and roast coffee at the farmers market so that smell just permeates around our booth. And then we sell the bags, and then we give out samples too. We always make a couple gallons of coffee and just give it away at the farmers market. And it just goes like crazy.
Yeah, I think Dan, I would have to say, is the king of doing events. I see him with his tent every week. He's got his tent somewhere.
Well, we do two farmers markets every Saturday, every Monday, every other Wednesday and every Friday. We have farmers markets, and then we have pop-up events. We do one called Courage Rock Stables. They do they have horse training for veterans. They use it for PTSD stuff. So we go out there and do a fundraiser there. We've got a place called OCB. It's Operation Bravo Charlie, and what they do is they started out as a motorcycle group where they'd go in and work on motorcycles for PTSD, all veterans, but it's gone into farming and fishing and all kinds of stuff. They've got a peer support group on Thursday nights. So we do a couple of big farm fundraisers for them. But yeah, the events are, we're always jumping in on something.
Yeah, I started last year doing some fundraising. Hey, I was going to say hi to Drew. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I just got myself muted. I'm at the church's coffee shop. We had a late meeting for the trip to Uganda we're taking this year, so I just had it muted. There's a lot of background noise and stuff, but I'm here and I'm good.
All right, well, my internet loaded at like 65, so it's sort of slow tonight. It took me about 15 minutes. I was going to start the show a half an hour early because I had some people I was texting with, and it took me 40 minutes to get it online. I had to shut everything down in the house. But tomorrow they're coming out to run me a cat cable out here on the back porch so I can plug it in. But a couple of these guys, Bill and Dan. Now, Garrett, you bought some coffee from us, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact,
right.
I just got a batch a week or two ago.
Okay. So yeah, pretty much all these guys, and there's some people online. Can you guys see the questions that people are asking, or is that just me? There's there's a comment section over here, so there's a few people asking questions, but
no, I can't see it.
There's no set of rules. You can talk about anything, and just if you know somebody in here, ask them questions. But out of the group, all three of these other guys, Ranger Dan, Bill, and Garrett, you guys all have the Be More 1600 for your sample roaster, or it might be your only roaster. But Ranger Dan has a 2K roaster that he roasts on. And what do you roast on, Drew? You want to tell us a little bit intro a little bit?
Yeah, so a little bit of intro. The roasting that I do, we're Legacy Coffee Roasters, coffee roasting company, and we started off on a Be More. Was it the new one they have, the Plus? Started off on that for a year as pretty much the main learning curve that we had, and it got to the point where I was spending an entire Saturday just running roast back to back to back. Ran through a handful of afterburners, having to replace them to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't keep doing this. I'm either going to upgrade it or I'm going to quit. And I ended up making the jump to a 2-pound Sono Fresco, which it actually takes about 2.8 pounds as the standard load. Can't be less than that. Can't be more than that. It's got to be right at it. Comes with this little can that you use as your measuring device. But I've been thoroughly impressed with it so far. In about 1 hour, I can run out a little over 8 pounds of coffee. It took me from a whole Saturday of roasting to now, within 2 to 3 hours, I can have all the roasting that I need done. Everything ground, bagged, ready to go. I've been thoroughly impressed with it. I was a little skeptical with it at first because I didn't really have any experience air roasting. But as far as what we had to go into an upgrade to allow for a larger capacity to be roasted, it just kind of seemed like the best move. So we took the gamble on it and jumped into it, and so far it's worked out real well.
Now, do you sell online also?
No, we don't sell online yet. Right now, all we're doing is we have 2 vendor fairs that we're in. One is every Tuesday, one is every other Thursday, and then we kind of have a guy in our town has a storefront that is set up for vendors to come in, and you basically rent out a space, and we've got a space in there.
Oh, okay.
Where's home, Drew? Where's home, Drew?
Where's home? Home is Troy, Illinois. So we're just right across the river from St. Louis.
Yep, I know where you're at. I'm in Columbia.
Okay.
Missouri. So right down the road from you.
Yeah, not too far. Not too far at all.
I'm in Rensselaer, Indiana.
I've been there. I have an uncle that used to pastor a church in Rensselaer, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and I've got another one that's pastoring a church in Morocco, Indiana.
Oh, yeah, that's right down the street, too.
Yeah, and then I've got a good friend that pastors a church in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I know some folks that are missionaries that are getting ready to be on their way to South Africa that own a roastery and coffee shop in where it's. I don't want to say Princeton, Indiana. They're in the southern India. Well, I say southern Indiana portion. They're directly east of us here. It's like a straight shot into it, but yeah. So I'm pretty familiar with
Cool.
Indiana.
Hey, what's your uncle's church in Morocco? Do you know the name of it?
Oh, it's the River Church.
I'm going to shoot over there and say hi.
Yeah, his pastor's name's Josh Cowan.
Well, it's a small world.
Small world we're living in.
So Drew, are you doing natural gas or propane on that soda fresco?
Right now, I'm running off of propane, which I think I'm going to have to swap off of here shortly. I've got some friends who are opening up a bakery, and they want to lease out a space to us to set up so that they have something that sets their bakery apart from any of the other bakeries in town, having a roastery in it, fresh roasted coffee with it. And I imagine moving into that, I don't know if the health department will be cool with, oh yeah, just run a propane tank, or if they're going to want me to have a dedicated natural gas line, how that's going to work out. But I've been running off propane.
You can just get an adapter though, right? Or
yeah. From my understanding, just be an adapter. Running off propane on it right now, though, I'm really impressed with how long the tank lasts.
Okay.
Since
I keep pretty good track of mine. I have a 100-pound tank that I use, but it's I have to keep track of it because you never want to run out. 25 pounds at a time. If you run out in the middle of the roast, that's a pretty good chunk of coffee that gets ruined. But my roaster was actually built here in Honduras, and I was able to have some input on it. And so I have a double reduction gear system on mine. Because like tonight, the internet sort of does what it wants to. Sundays, you pretty much can count on not having electricity. And so my family knows the drill. If I'm out here roasting and the electricity goes out, it's all hands on deck. They all come running out because I put the hand crank in the back of it, and it's got that double reduction pulley, and I can stick that hand crank in there, and I'll keep cranking the drum so that the coffee doesn't burn. And then with that propane, and so I can keep doing it. The only downside is everything was set up 220, and I had to redo it as 110 so that my cooling fan, so that my air control on the roaster, I could switch it over real quick to the generator. It would run 110, and then I'll crank the drum and we'll finish the roast out because the propane burners will just keep going. And as long as I can handle turning that drum for, another 12 minutes, then we can finish the roast out. But I love the propane. I always heard that the natural gas isn't as hot as the propane. Like on mine, you have to re-jet it or whatever in order to do it. But I was talking to a customer about 2 years ago, and, guys are comparing drum size all the time. And he said, how big is your drum? And I said, 22 by 22. And he said, mine's 22 by 22. Except for I've got a Honduran built roaster, and he had a Probat. But the Probat, when you buy their big fancy roaster, you get a whole setup for natural gas and a whole setup for propane. And he was on natural gas. So I traded him a full bag of coffee for all of his setup. And then I came home and just gutted my machine and put his Probat in it. But what I didn't know was mine runs off PSI, and the Probat runs off of inches of water column, which is apparently a lot less than PSI. So when I turned that bad boy on, it blew the door open on the cage. It just made quite a mess in the building, but it was way too much gas for it. And so then I had to replumb everything, and I put two regulators together to get it down, into the inches of water column. And I don't know a lot about gas, so I ended up putting the regulators to get the pressure down, but then I had to upsize the pipe to get the flow I needed. And so, as we were running off of a rubber hose, like a rubber gas line, and so I changed everything over to 1/2-inch pipe, and so now everything is a little more regulation. But man, well, I used to roast 20 and pounds at a time, and 22 was my max. Once I redid the piping on it last month, now I roast 25, with 28 being my max. To finish, 20 would be a dark roast. And with the dark roast, you're not as in, it'll take me like maybe 16 minutes to finish a dark roast. And I can go 30 pounds on that. And, and you hate to say this out loud, but the dark roast is not really that important what it tastes like. You're losing almost all of your flavors that we put into the coffee, that the coffee has naturally when you go that dark. But then we live next to a retirement home, and they come in and they want it dark. And so if they want it flavored, I flavor it. If they want it dark, I make it dark. But I really hate to, but I can do in 16 minutes, I can do 30 pounds of dark roast. And I end up with about 24 pounds of coffee, comes out of 30 of green. But that's what they like. And I got one old lady that came in, and she said, I want some coffee, and I want dark roast. I'm like, okay. So I got her a pound bag. I laid it on the counter, and she lays $8 on the counter. And she said, this is what I pay for my coffee. And I was like, okay. And so every time she comes in, she gives me $8, and I give her a pound of coffee. Not going to argue with her. She's like 90 something years old. So she told me what she paid, and I just bowed down to her. But
why don't you don't tell anybody else?
Yeah, don't spread the word. But no, her name.
Your dark roast might be what's keeping her alive, Ashley. So.
Could be. I feel like I'm probably going to die about 3 hours before I actually quit moving, just because of how much coffee I drink every day. I'm just going to keep going for a little while longer. But
right.
No,
I'm running propane, and I got really blessed about a month ago. The guy across the street worked in the mill, and he retired, and he's certified to decommission propane tanks. So he makes them into like smokers and this and that and the other. So he got like 200 propane tanks dropped off on his farm over there. And I was over there talking to him, and he's like, yeah, most of these have about 30% left in them, and I got to burn this stuff off. And I'm like, well, you can just bring it over to my house and put it outside my roastery, and I'll burn it off for you. He brought a 500-gallon tank over here that was 40% full at the beginning of the summer, and it still I've been roasting once a week, and I think I'm down to about 45%.
Wow.
So I got all this free propane, and he's like, as much as you want.
Don't they make a converter valve where you can? My dad had one of those big 300-gallon tanks or whatever you call it. They're like 12 foot long or something. And he used to be able to fill up the barbecue, that little tank that the barbecue grill works off of. And he had his generator at the house converted over to propane, and we would go over and fill it up with that little thing. Man, if you could get one of those, you'd have propane for life and wouldn't have to drag a big tank over.
He just brings it over with his tractor and sets it down where I need it, and away I go.
You can't beat that, man.
Dan, we're going to need your address, okay? Could you just supply that in private chat over here? He's going on.
Sure, come on over and get one.
When I moved,
to be honest with you, Dan, I'm more down the street from you than I am from. Well, I am from Drew too, but I actually live off of Highway 24. just really extended. I'm actually from Wabash.
Oh,
Over
okay.
that direction, yeah, originally. So I when I heard Rensselaer, I was like, I know that town. So I
Yeah.
started looking up there, but so I'm down Highway 24 from you, just a really long way, but Highway 24. So
Now, Garrett, where do you live at?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
So pretty close to the west side of Phoenix where Glendale is. So
Well, I drove to California one time, and we stopped right outside of Phoenix and went to sleep. And that's about all I know of that. We just kept on trucking.
it is beautiful all winter long. It is
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. And there are some nice things. Like from Phoenix, you drive an hour and a half north of here, 2 hours north of here. You're in Prescott or Flagstaff, which are higher elevation. So in the wintertime, they will get snow. You can actually go skiing up in Flagstaff, and it's only a couple hours drive. You drive 6 hours straight west, and you're in LA. You can get to the beach. So I mean, there's a lot of other weather besides just high desert available, with not a crazy amount of travel, but it does get pretty hot come summertime.
Well, that's Kansas too. Kansas gets too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. And like right now, it's 65 out here. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt, just sitting on the back porch, drinking coffee, and we never get over. I've seen it 88 degrees, but that's about as hot as it gets here. And in the winter, it gets down to 55. It feels cold. It's sort of a wet cold. It's usually foggy during the winter. Every I've got has got at least 4 amber fog lights on it. Just if you have to go out at night, I mean, it's just solid fog. My roastery or my cupping lab is exactly 30 feet from the house, and it's been so foggy that you couldn't see it.
Wow.
It was just pure fog. And if you have to go somewhere, it's just a nightmare to get there when the fog is that bad. But we're on the top. When you get to my house, then when you pass it, you start going down. So we're at like 5,100 feet on the top of the hill up there. So that's for our region right here. That's about as tall as it gets. I think there's some mountains here that are like 6,800, 7,000 feet, but it's ideal for coffee, and it's just a beautiful, it's a beautiful place. I need to do a podcast. I'm going to do one later in the week during the day, so you can see all the mountains and all that. I'm trying to get StreamYard on my cell phone because the cell phone really picks up the mountains and stuff. It's just really a beautiful view. And we're down in the farm. We're not anywhere near the road. So you can hear the 18-wheelers for the most part. It's fairly quiet. Now, until right when we started the podcast, there's a Pentecostal church that meets over here at somebody's house. And man, they were throwing down. And not knocking Pentecostals, but here we've got Catholics on one side and Pentecostals on the other. And the Catholics are pretty quiet. And because a lot of my workers are Pentecostal and they go to that house and meet. And man, they got the speakers turned wound up, and they usually go to about midnight. So I'm not sure if the speaker blew or what happened tonight, but they quietened down for us. But no, they go at it. My preacher, we've got a church on the farm, and he was asking for speakers, and I was like, no, I'll buy you most anything you want, but I'm not buying those big 4-foot speakers to go in a 60 by 60 building or 40 by 60 building. But they want to make sure God can hear it too, I think. So they crank it up. But no, I got him a set of DeWalt. DeWalt makes a set of speakers that are Bluetooth. So I'm going to give him those tomorrow. And he can, I think he can get the word out. We just put that in the middle of the building. I think that'll be loud enough. And most kids can hear pretty well, but maybe some of the older people can't. But that's my main complaint is when they start doing their revivals, which is about 2 or 3 a month, they'll go till 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. And, here the weather's where we leave the windows open, pretty much all the time, unless it rains. But when I did my roof, I've got a 4-foot overhang all the way around the house. The house is just a little 30-foot by 30-foot. And I've got a 4-foot overhang all the way around it. So when it rains, unless it's a big storm, rain doesn't come in the house. And we just leave the windows open. And of course, everything here has a dehumidifier in it, especially the coffee rooms and in the children's library. We have to have dehumidifiers in all those areas. But I've got one in the house just because since COVID is when we left Honduras. We moved here in 2014. And when COVID hit, they closed the borders of all the Central American countries. But because we were North Americans, they gave us the option to leave. And so my wife was pretty upset because, they had us convinced that we were all going to die, and so she wanted to get home. And so that's when we went home. I said, we're going to die here, or we're going to die somewhere. And she said, well, I want to go home. And so we went back to the States, stayed there about 4 months. And then I came back here, and man, it was like watching some kind of science fiction movie. When I got off the airplane in Honduras, they had us wearing 2 masks before we got off the plane. And you walk through these big thermal things where it just took your temperature of your whole body. And you're sitting there in fear that, you might be a little warm because you walk too fast. And then they got these little guns. They're running around shooting everybody with your, the forehead, which now we've learned you're not supposed to do that. And then they shoot your wrist. And then, you go to the next station. We walked through this whole room. It's probably 24 foot long, and it had floor mats inside of like little containers, and they were filled with bleach. And so you had to step through all of those. And then you step through an area where you dried your feet off. And in order to get into the general population area of the airport. And you had to fill out questionnaires, and man, it was just, it was an ordeal. And then until last month, we had to wear masks and sit 6 feet apart in the bank. And we still had to, and they take your temperature, they shoot you with hand sanitizer, and you could go in the bank. And it was the same thing in the grocery store until last month. Last month, they finally regulation, but you had to get your temperature taken. You'd hold your hand out, and they'd give you the hand sanitizer, and you had to wear your mask and to go into the grocery stores here. But yeah, it was pretty weird. When COVID hit, you had to be, even in your car with your family, they required you wear a mask and gloves. So, and we weren't allowed to leave our house. I was having to sneak out to get food. We'd been here for 2 months waiting to try to get out. And so there was somebody left a motorcycle here. I'd jump on the motorcycle and ride into it's about 2 miles up the road to a little convenience store kind of thing. And I just parked behind the building so nobody would see me. And because it was legal to walk into the store. I could walk 2 miles to go to the store, but I wasn't allowed to drive on the road. And so I would park behind the building, and I'd fill my backpack full of all the food I could get in there. And then I'd zip on home. And I did that every, couple of days. So it was pretty crazy though. Nobody in my little area here ever got COVID. So, half the people don't even believe, they so distrust their government. They may not even believe that COVID exists, because nobody died. Old people died, but old people die all the time, and so, nobody stamped it COVID, and so, and here when you die, there's not some autopsy or investigation. They don't embalm you. Usually if you die early in the morning, they'll have a wake that night and bury you that next morning. If you die at night, they'll have the wake in the morning and bury you the next afternoon, Wow. And so there's and it's because there's no embalming. So they just get you in the ground and there you go. That's the end. But I've got the I don't have the extension tube, but I have the Fresh Roast 700. The only thing I don't like about it is if you're not paying attention, it does. I've burned a lot of beans in it. And when Anna and the girls will use it, sometimes they'll put too many beans in it, and then the ones on the bottom aren't. You weigh it down and they're not moving. So then you have sort of that Dunkin' Donuts blend where it burns the snot out of everything on the bottom. And they still drink it. They don't care. They just want to. They're just in there playing around, killing time sometimes, and they'll fire it up and roast a little bit. And I'm more worried about them. I can't believe somebody would build a roaster and there's not some kind of clamp to hold that top piece on, because it's way, the center of gravity is up on the very top of the machine. And I can't believe I've had it 6 years and nobody's broken the thing. But so far it runs fine, and I never had any trouble out of it. Day one out of the box, it wouldn't get hot. And so they sent me another base for it. But other than that, I've never had a minute's trouble out of it, and it's fun to roast. And I keep it in the apartment. We have an apartment for visitors, and anybody that knows how to roast, I leave it in there, and a French press and a grinder and V60 and some couple basic things. And so if somebody's here and they want to learn, roast their own coffee, they can roast their own. I do have a note that says, if you've never roasted coffee in your life, please don't try, but other than that,
So
it's,
I've been looking at picking up a fresh roast as a sample roaster. Overall, how well of a roaster is it? I don't have any experience with it. I've seen a lot of people that use them, love them to death, and swear by them. I've seen a lot of people who move from like a popcorn roaster or popcorn popper up to a fresh roast, absolutely fall in love with the fresh roast, but I just don't have any experience on it. But I think it's probably I would imagine it would offer similar profiles to what I would get out of the Sono Fresco.
Well, that was the main reason that I quit using the fresh roast, was because it was so different. I'm roasting a drum roaster during the day for my production, and you really can't. It's not an apples to apples thing. I couldn't really develop a profile on the fresh roast and then roast on a drum roaster. But out of the box, man, it was easy enough to learn. And my instructions were in Chinese and English, and so Anna and them have basically taught themselves how to roast. They just sort of pick a middle setting and throw some beans in there and turn it on. So it's easy enough to use. But as far as developing a profile, I don't know. I don't know much about that. I do know a lot of guys. Bill was wanting to do put a probe in his, and I know a lot of guys, that do the probes on there. But I'm not an educated guy. But my thought on it was, if you drop a probe straight down into that tube, and you're blowing 400-degree air up it, I just don't see how it's reading the bean temperature versus just reading an air temperature. So I don't know. I never really thought about putting a probe in mine. But
well, the one that I was looking at specifically, the Razzo extension tube that Kent Harris, I think is the guy's name, over on Pinterest makes, it probes straight in the side. It doesn't come from the top down. It goes straight into the beans from the side. I mean, it'd be the same problem. I have a fear that you're thinking. It just would be from the side instead of from the top. But I don't know if that would make a difference or not. But it's about, I don't know, on the tube, it's something like maybe 2 or 3 inches up. The 12-inch tube is where the probe goes into it. So,
well, that would be when I would put a probe in the top, just from a curiosity thing to make me sleep better at night. I would use that one in the side, and I'd drop one in the top and see if there was a big difference. Because my roaster was an artisan roaster. A guy named Bill just built it. I told him about how big I wanted it, and he had built some roasters before, and he just built it. And it had a cheap Chinese thermometer just right in the air, in the air exhaust.
Yeah.
And that was it. There was no air control. There was no heat control, nothing. And so then I bought a Fidget 1048 controller, and it'll do 4 probes. And then I bought Fidget K-type probes and put in there. And it's just got a USB and plugs right in the side of your computer. And then I downloaded that artisan roasting profile thing from GitHub. And somebody had to help me set it up. I'm not smart enough to set up the whole. It was basically plug and play. But I did notice, I talked to a guy, he owns Leland Roasters over in Dallas, Texas. And I was talking to him, and he said he had a company build him a plexiglass door. And for just a short term, he put the plexiglass door on his roaster instead of the metal one. And then he kept moving his probe in different locations. And he said when he had it far left corner of the door versus far right corner of the door, there was a massive difference in the temperature. And according to what your drum rotation is, all that coffee piles up, makes the next spin. And that's your best sampling of what your actual bean temperature is. And so I didn't have to do a lot of investigating. I just did what he said to do. And it was exactly opposite of where I'd already put my probe. But I just had an electric welder and a drill. And so I just welded a nut, drilled a hole in it, welded a nut on it, and put a probe in. So I just moved it to the other side of the door and welded that hole shut. And but there was a big difference in the bean temperature. But the main difference in using the Artisan for me was eventually replace the Chinese temperature gauge with like an Ashcroft. It's a pretty decent temperature gauge. The main difference was how fast the temperature is actually going up when you hook it up to that digital system. The Ashcroft probe would be about 15, sometimes 20 degrees behind what the digital one was. And then I do what's called a soak method of roasting. So when I first start roasting my coffee, before I start roasting my coffee, I'll preheat the machine for about 15 minutes. And then I'll shut the gas off, and your temperature should just start gradually dropping. If not, then you really don't have your drum hot enough. And this is just from wisdom from other people telling me what they do. But once I get that drum hot, when I drop my coffee in there, I shut the gas all the way off. And man, that temperature just goes down and down and down. And then all of a sudden she starts making that turn. Well, right in that turn, I throw it up to about 6 inches of water column. And then I start my upward climb, with gas power. And so, man, the digital just really gives you a great readout on. And Dan, yours has got all digital, didn't it?
Yeah.
Your readouts and stuff. Yeah, I just sort of had to build everything from mine. I built I put in the push buttons. Yeah, you've got programmable stuff on yours. I just went into my air vent. I broke the tube in half. I drilled a hole and ran a rod through it. And then I built a circle to that. And I just made a butterfly valve. And that's how I control my air. But with the digital, you can really see how that air, turning it to a third or turning it all the way off, how that air control makes a massive difference in how the coffee roasts. And so all of my profiles, people ask me for a profile, but all of my profiles basically just work on my machine because mine is so, slapped together and stuff like that. And, but when I had my machine here, and I'm not exaggerating, when I say I caught it on fire, I set it on fire 3 different times to where when that door came open, there were yellow coffee beans coming out the door. But here they want the coffee burnt. They want it black, glossy, dripping oil off of it. That's what they like to drink in Honduras. And so we call it third crack. And man, my exhaust is just blasting white smoke out of the side of the building. But that's the way they like it. And that's what the market will bear. But if you're not careful, you'll set that sucker on fire. And when I moved to Honduras, I took some pictures of the machine. And then a month later, somebody was saying, "Did you buy a new machine?" I was like, "No, I finally painted the thing because I get all the scorch marks off of it." But every time I would catch it on fire, I'd have to pull my exhaust fan and rebuild it because it would ruin all the vanes in the fan. It would just get so hot in there. And so you just take it apart. And twice I had the bottom of the cooling tray, I had to take it out and beat it flat. I'd take it up on the flat patio and beat it again because it would bow that floor. And then your cooling bats that are going around would like scrape on it. And it was a nightmare every time you set that thing on fire. And finally, I put a water hydrant right out the window, and I left a water hose there. And so you catch it on fire, I would dump a brand new batch of coffee on top to try to smother the beans out that were inside of it. And then I would open the door back up again and start spraying water on everything. And so you'd ruin 50 pounds of coffee, every time you caught it on fire. But dumping that fresh load of beans on top of the ones that are on fire drops that temperature drastically and helps you get the fire out. And so it was, I guess, I don't know if it's worth it or not, but that was what I did when I catch it on fire. And so, so if you start setting your machine on fire, I could help you with that, but not a roast profile.
Hey, Dan, you said you got yours from AliExpress. Were all you got your roaster from AliExpress? Were all the instructions in Chinese? Did it come like pre-assembled on a pallet, or did you have to put it together?
It was all together, except for like the hoses and stuff, but yeah, everything was in Chinese. So I had to learn how to run the machine, and the other thing was that instead of Fahrenheit, everything was in Celsius. So I had to figure out how to switch the machine from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And then it's got automatic shutoffs and stuff that were shutting the machine down because it was they were set for Celsius, but I had the machine switched over to Fahrenheit. So I'd be roasting, I'd get to 150 degrees, and all of a sudden the machine had shut off. Like, what's going on?
Well, you might have to learn.
A lot of playing with.
It might be a good idea.
A lot of playing with, but I got it. Huh?
I was going to say it might be a good idea for us all learn Chinese anyway. Everything we're buying nowadays comes from over there. So I joined a group called Market Square or something like that. And I'm not knocking the Chinese stuff, but it's more of trying to buy more stuff made in America. And I can't think what the name of the group is, but like all the bags I buy, they come from China, and it's, but we're paying like 58 cents a bag for, but when we started out, we were paying 75 cents, but now that we've got a bulk, we're getting bulk prices. And so we're paying a little bit less. And so my idea was I've learned to live with the profit from, 75 cents a bag. So I think I'm going to look for a place that I can get bags for somewhere around 75 to 82 cents a pop and still be the craft bags that I like and within reasonable price. And I don't know, we just need to buy some more stuff from here. That's just my view. I have a lot of views, but that'll be the only one I say tonight. But yeah, that all goes into the marketing. A lot of people want to buy more hometown stuff. And well, that's like with our first fundraiser. I talked to this elementary school, and they'd been buying coffee from this company, and the company bought a full bag of coffee from me. And I mailed them samples, which I rarely do. And then they agreed to buy one bag of coffee. But then when I delivered the coffee, because they were only about 25 minutes from my house, they made me pull a sampling out of that bag, and we cupped it again, and then they accepted the bag. And then they said, well, send us a bill and we'll give it to our, accountant or whatever, and they'll mail you a check. Well, 3 years later, they hadn't paid me. And so the little local school in our town was doing a fundraiser, and I found out that they bought their coffee from that company. So I'm like, well, I'm going to go in there and at least I can say, it's my town. They need to be buying coffee from me. And so the year before they bought coffee, they sold 234 pounds using that company. And because we were like hometown, when everybody found out that we were the ones, the local guy was doing the roasting, we sold right at 500 pounds that year. And the teacher that was in charge of it, that was a crap load of coffee. I wasn't expecting that. And I told him, when you turn the order in, I'll have it to you in 5 days. Well, that was a tough one. But it just supporting that local. And the teacher said, a lot of the guys, said it's from Mound Ridge. And they were like, yeah, it's a roaster right here in town. And that made a big difference. And then last year, their order was 777 pounds and 3,000. And so we had to roast, rest, pack, and deliver all of that in 8 days. And so
Wow.
it took almost 2 days just to roast it. And then once we did that, the stuff that was ground, we went ahead and started packaging it. So as soon as it cooled down, we took it straight into the grinder. When it was cool enough to come out of the machine, we let it set for 1 more hour, and then we ran it through the grinder and started packing it. Normally I let my coffee roast for about 2 to 3 days before we send it out. But it didn't seem to hurt the quality on the ground stuff. And then the whole bean, we did let it rest. But man, it takes a long time to fill 3,000 K-cups by hand. And so we had plenty to do while the whole beans were resting. So, but I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I've been setting up for, when we start getting bigger. And so a couple of years ago, we had a lot of green coffee, and I didn't have green customers. And so I would bet that 80% of the stuff in my shop, I traded green coffee for. I've got a nice setup of grinders. I traded green coffee for all those. I've got 2 of the conveyor sealers. I've got 2 of the weigh fill machines, and then I've got the bigger foot pedal sealing machine. I traded green coffee for all of it. My espresso machine, one of my Hucky 500s, I traded green coffee for that. I traded all my portafilters and all. I traded roasting coffee for that. It's just I've got coffee, and I don't, it's just sitting there. And so whether I made a good deal or a bad deal, I needed a grinder, and they had a grinder, and I had coffee. So I just did some trading. And so last year when we had that big, I had my Taekwondo instructor and her brother come in, and they ran the 2 weigh fill machines. My son Jonathan was packing K-cups. Eli was snapping the caps, and Julia was putting them in boxes. And I was sitting there roasting coffee as hard as I could. And our bulk specialty grinder will do 30 pounds every 9 minutes on the number 6 setting. So, we were wearing that sucker out. I took a 5-gallon, one of those 5-gallon water jugs, and cut the bottom out of it and put that on top of the cone on my grinder. And so we could, we filled that sucker up. I built a chute out of cardboard boxes and just ran the coffee straight into a garbage can. And with a Grain Pro bag inside of it, and we were just grinding. And there was one time we had the concrete mixer going at the same time. So as soon as that coffee hits, we got a thermostat in the cooling tray. So as soon as it would hit about 120 degrees, I would throw it into the concrete mixer, and then we would toss in 6 ounces of flavoring. And so it would finish cooling and flavoring all at the same time with that going. And my building is 28 by, I think about 28 by 28. And so it's not a big area. And, and there's tables in there. There's a 4x8 rack where we store the coffee, and a 4x8 rack table that we serve customers on. and then one wall is completely covered with countertop, and that's where we fill orders. So it's not a huge place to work. And so we were just running over the top of each other, and it's just a miracle we didn't screw up the orders. We had about a dozen of them that people got the wrong coffee, but being local, we just ran it to their house. But now, I'm glad that we've got some extra equipment when things do go bad. But right now I've got one grinder that I only use for flavored coffee. I've got a dedicated grinder for the dark roast, a dedicated grinder for the decaf. And then I've got two grinders that are just specialty coffee. And then I've got that big, it's a German grinder, like Malkonen. I've got 3 buns and 3 of the German ones, but it's a Malkonen Guatemalan 43. And that's the one that'll do 30 pounds every 9 minutes. And man, it's a uniform grind. And the other 2 German grinders are GH2s, which is a fairly common grinder. But when you do number 6 on one of those and number 6 on the 43, you can't tell the difference in the grain. The downside to the bun grinders that I have is they have pictures on them instead of numbers. They'll have a picture of a percolator or, and so it took a long time, and I just used colored paint pens to mark the different things, where number 6 is and where number 8 is. So it was a little more confusing when you're trying to grind flavored coffee for a K-cup, and you need to be like 2.5. Yeah, that's a GH2 right there. But Bun, Grindmaster, the ones that say Gourmet Coffee, I think they're all Bun. They're all made by that same company. Because I have a Grindmaster here, and it takes the same burrs as my buns do. So I'm pretty sure that they're all made by the same company. But that's something, if you've got a Be More, or, a fresh roast or any of those things, be on the lookout for like a GH2 grinder. They're $300 to $500, but man, they dropped mine off the shelf.
Like this grinder.
What is it?
How do you like that grinder?
What brand is that?
I don't know. I got it at an auction for $20.
That's the best
but it's old. It is really, really old, but it works.
Yeah, I've got one now. I was doing some trading with this guy, and he's got a huge company. Last year, he sold 128,000 pounds of roasted coffee. And I went into his basement, and he had 8 pallets full of grinders. And because I told him I needed some grinders, and he's like, well, he said, tell Christian to take you down there and sort of look and see. And my wife was, if we're married, you've all pissed off your wife at one time or the other. But if you tell her, say, listen, baby, I'm going to Wichita to buy a grinder. And when you pull back in the truck, you've had to stop at Walmart to buy straps because you come home with 9 grinders. Yes, she was not happy. Because I waste a lot of money buying shiny stuff sometimes. But there was a grinder in the corner, and it was just beautiful. It had a paint job on it like a car. And it was dated 1953, and it was from I can't even think what country it was. It took me a while to look up the language just to see what country it was. But the little cone or funnel or whatever where you put the coffee in the top, it was hand beaten with a hammer. The thing is beautiful, and the paint on it is gorgeous. And
wow.
And I said something to the guy, and after we'd made our trade, he said, "Go ahead and load that in Ashley's truck." He said he appreciates it, and he'll do something with it. So I've got to, my building's so small, but I got to do something with it. And I took it home and piddled with it, and got the motor working again. And so that's going to be what I start grinding my flavored coffee with. But she's a beast. Somebody's replaced the motor on it with like a little 3rd-horse motor, and but it grinds pretty well. The adjuster doesn't work really well. It's not real precise, but for flavored coffee, if you get it pretty close, that's you don't do a lot of adjusting on that. And if I need to grind K cups, I just throw them in the other one. But man, it's beautiful. It's like a German country or Switzerland, somewhere in that direction. But it was a pretty grinder, and I just like the handmade stuff on it and the paint job. But yeah, I'm going back there again and try to do some trading. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? That Malcatone or Malcaline or something? I'll have to post it on my Facebook page. But it's a German grinder, like the Guatemalan 43s. Those things are like $4,000 a piece. But it's like the last grinder you'll ever need to buy.
What is it, like Malconic, I think?
Yeah, yeah. I've got a couple of the G8 running like
Yeah, I think you usually find them running like, I want to say somewhere around like $3,000, $3,500. When I was on a hunt for a grinder for a long time, and was looking everywhere and would see those and thought they looked awesome. But I was like, man, that's a lot on a grinder right now. But I actually lucked into a Grindmaster, brand new, never used, and I got it for $250. Had to drive to Kentucky to pick it up, and I don't know what went on, what took place there, how the guy ended up with it. But when I pulled up, he was like, "Yeah, I just can't drink coffee anymore. Bought this and never ran anything through it." And I started asking, "Man, do you know what you have here, bro? Like, this is worth a lot more than $250." Looked at the inside of it and it was clean, like it had never been used. But I really got blessed in that situation.
Yeah.
You'll find a steel.
Well, there's one called Used Coffee Equipment USA. And, you'll find some pretty good deals on those. I found a couple. I found one that was in Tennessee, and I called a buddy of mine. It was $50. It was a GH2 bun, and they had it for $50. And I told him, I said, if you got time, it was about 10 minutes from his house. I said, if you got time, go by, and if it'll plug in and turn on, buy it. And I said, just sit on it. And I said, I'll give you $100 for it when I come through town. And so when I got there, he had it. They live in a little bitty old trailer house, and he had it plugged in. They got like a little bitty coffee maker, and they got this big old GH2 sitting beside of it. And he said, we've been using it. It's yours, And so I threw it in the seat and put a seatbelt on it and gave him $100 and used it. But, I had one of my buddies, Jose, he owns Third Day Coffee in Seguin, Texas. He was getting that point where he needed to start putting on a few more grinders, and he just happened to be at the house. And so I was like, just throw it in the back of your truck, man. Just, you can have it. I didn't, I used it for 2 years, and then I traded up to these other GH2. Well, no, they're not GH2s, but they're buns, and they were quite a bit newer. But this guy I traded with, I got those two Malcolins or whatever. They're loud. They're really loud. And the guy that works for him said, "No," he said he's old and he didn't like the noise, and so he just said put them. He ordered 5 of the Deeding. He paid $25,000 for those Deedings. And then he retired 2 of the buns and 2 of those German ones. And he said the German ones were only about 5 or 6 months old. But he said, they've got a counter and they're waiting on customers and they grind the coffee right there. He said they were just too loud. So probably next year he's going to be retiring those Deedings. And so I've already put my 2 cents worth in on those. I'd love to have those. But I can't do too much trading because he buys about 30 bags of coffee. And this guy's really helped us out a lot, because when I get ready to ship my container, he gets first pick of all the coffee, and he'll buy 30 bags of anything he wants, but he'll pay me up front. And so selling those 30 bags is what pays for the container. And so that a container to be shipped into the States. And so I don't have to make a loan. I don't have to put that money back or anything. And so, he gets his pick of the coffees, and with the agreement, he can't buy out all my Marseillaise or something like that. But he gets, he picks out what he wants, and then he writes me a check for the whole 30 bags. So that's he has 20 something $1,000, and so that's a huge help for us. But then he turns around and, that Guatemalan 43, I paid $100 for it. And he said, well, it wasn't working when, he said, we got rid of it because it wasn't working. And so he said, for parts, you can have it for $100. I'm like, all right, and I figured I could pull that many parts off of it and sell it online. And so when he left, I plugged it in and it came on. And so the guy said, well, I think the motor's bad. I think it keeps, it'll run for a minute and then quit. But man, I took it apart and cleaned it up, and it has never failed. And so I felt bad about giving him $100 for it, but that's what he said he wanted for it, and that's what I gave him. And so there you go. So one day maybe I'll if I get something, they make a bigger one, I'll gift it to somebody else or something. But you get a good deal every once in a while. You just got to be ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because whenever I had to make the drive for the Grindmaster, I was not ready for it. I had just gotten done doing a market. I had some other stuff going on that I needed to take care of, and I just happened to scroll through the marketplace and see the listing for it, and I was like, I think it was like a 5-hour drive, 5-hour drive, something like that to get to it, and I just couldn't pass it up, man. I just had to jump on it, make the drive, do it. Not going to find that deal anywhere else probably, so I feel that.
Well, I trade enough. I've never had to change out the burrs or anything like that, but I've pulled them all out. They're simple enough to pull out. I did break that little key inside that Guatemalan 43, and the company doesn't have them. It was like a 3-month wait to get one. And so I literally took a Honduran nickel and ground it down a little bit and shoved it in there. So the metal's too hard. It wouldn't break next time. But then I had my guy here in Honduras. He made me a couple out of aluminum. And so I just swapped it out. But it got me through my fundraising period where I was having to grind a lot of coffee. But the 43 generates a lot of static electricity. It's really messy. But other than that, I love it. And a lot of them do. The other two grinders do that as well. Like I have a little wooden stick, and a couple minutes after you fill a bag of coffee, you can go and tap that chute, and there's always a little bit of coffee that drops out that just sort of clings in there from that static electricity. But I put all that in a bag, and I give it to the homeless shelter. And
do you ever spritz it with a little bit of water before you grind it to kind of cut that down?
No, because that might I don't know if that would make the coffee clot up or anything. Or a lot of guys will take a dryer sheet, an unscented dryer sheet, and go over it a little bit. But
I'm only ever grinding for the 1 cup I'm about to do a pour over, or a pot worth. So I've got a little mister. It's almost like a very fine spray you'd use for when you're ironing. That I'll just kind of spray the beans right before I throw it in the grinder. But I'm also brewing it like seconds later.
Yeah.
So I don't have the grounds flying everywhere from the static.
Okay. Yeah, that might work. I don't know.
But I don't know about bagging it for long term.
Well, for my like for the pour overs and stuff, I have the Barraza Encore and a Barraza Virtuoso.
Yeah,
that I sort of use. I've got an insane amount of like coffee methods. I don't like moving stuff around. Everything has its place and everything in its place. And so if you walk into my kitchen here, I've got my Bonavita Clever, I've got a V60, I've got French press. But then you go 30 feet out into the cupping lab, I've got 2 of all of those methods out there. And so, and then when you go in the house in Kansas versus going out to the roastery in Kansas, I have duplicates of everything. In the house, I don't have as much because that's mainly my wife making coffee. But in the cupping lab, and I was planning on doing a thing on it next week. But there's a formal cupping table, and I have an international cupping table, which means there's 5 slots in each station. And so if you're doing an international cupping, you're going to do 5 cups, 12 grams, number 6 grind in each one of those cups. And then you're going to come back and put 200 milliliters of water into each one of those cups. And then you'll let them steep. Then you come back and first you smell the grind dry. Then you'll smell it after it's bloomed. And then when you break the crust, you smell it. And then you start cupping it. So that's how you do a regular cupping. But because I have 6 different varieties of coffee on the farm, and then most of them we process 3 different ways, washed, red honey, and full natural. And so then, we're cupping those. We get a cupping score on them, flavor profiles. But then I take each one of those coffees over to I call it my coffee happy area. And then I'll take each one of those coffees and run them through the V60. The Clever is sort of like a V60, but it's got a valve on it so you can steep it. And then the same thing with the French press. You can steep the coffee in the French press. And then I've got the AeroPress, and that might be it. And then so I'll run each one of those coffees through that, and we'll sort of cup those to see if one coffee really stands out. Like maybe the red honey process will really stand out in the V60 versus the canal wash really stands out in the Clever or the French press. I do know that the full natural really stands out in the little AeroPress. And so Bill, did I send you a full natural? Did either one of you guys, Garrett, did y'all get a full natural in one of your orders?
I think I had a pound or 2 of that. Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't have it right here in front of me, so I'm not sure.
Well, if I didn't, remind me, and I'll get you a sample of it. You too, Dan. Let me know what your batch is, and I'll get you some. But man, that full natural, so many of my customers kept saying the same thing. They kept calling it the fruit bomb. And man, that was a big freaking spider. I was going to kill him, but he jumped. So, but man, it just really is hardcore fruit. And I know I'm jumping around a lot tonight. It would take me a solid month of a podcast to tell you everything I find fascinating about coffee. But it just like when you do, if you take the Lempira variety, which I have and which I do every year, I do a canal washed, a red honey process, and a full natural. The canal washed is going to have chocolate with caramel notes and a nutty finish. And that's when we pull the bean off, wash it, then dry it. The red honey is when we pull the cherry off. We don't wash it. We dry it in its own juices. And so its flavor profile generally is caramel, chocolate with hints of fruit. It's the same bean. And so it just says hints of fruit. But then when you do the full natural in that same Lempira variety, it'll have like blackberry or cherry. It'll have a definite fruit flavor where you can put your finger on exactly what fruit it tastes like. But the crazy thing is every year the profile changes, and I don't know why. I mean, I know weather has something to do with it, but we have 6 lots on the farm that consist of about 60% of the farm that are all Lempira variety. And so you're picking the same coffee every year, and you're basically processing it the same way every year, but then you get completely different flavor notes out of it. And I'm sure that somebody's done, maybe I should apply for some kind of grant and study it. But it just gives you completely different flavor profiles each time.
And you're getting that strong fruit more with the light roasts, like just barely out of first crack.
Yeah,
Or
I as soon as first crack is over, I'll do it. The one thing I quit doing was I quit doing a peaberry natural. It's harder to roast, and then the natural has the silver skin is about 3 times thicker than the silver skin would be on like a wash coffee, and so you really have to drop it in at a low temperature and really ease the gas up really slowly. Otherwise, it caramelizes that outer covering, and so you don't get your heat penetrating. Uh, the peaberry is only like 1% of the world's coffee, and so it's a more rare bean anyway, and so I just hate to ruin it. Uh, and in context, as far as price, this year we're going to raise the price quite a bit on peaberries. When our girls are hand selecting, I probably shouldn't call them girls, but when they're hand selecting the coffee, on average, the whole room will average 78 pounds per person per day selecting. But when they go to peaberry, they're selecting 5 to 6 pounds per person per day. And it's because the peaberry goes through that number 18 screen and goes out with the trash. And so they're having to select through all the trash to pull out. And so I think this year I've out of 28,000 pounds of coffee, I have 300 pounds. So that's slightly over 1% of the coffee is peaberry, but it is, what's that, about 15 times more expensive to select it out. So you're not going to get your money out of it ever. But what you will get is that you're not throwing it away, And we don't throw away the trash. The trash is what we roast and sell here in Honduras. But we roast it, bag it, and sell it for $1.35 a pound. So you're not getting much money for it. The only reason we do it is one of my projects on the farm. It's to provide a little second job for the workers, and so they check the coffee out, and when they check the coffee out, they get 20 pounds at a time. They go sell the 20 pounds, and then they come back and pay us, and then they keep the difference in what we charge and what they charge. So we sell it to them for 35 lempira, and they sell it in the street for 48 lempira. And so they'll make 50 cents a pound for every pound they sell. And so, that's $10 a week. And so that's a big chunk of different income, that they didn't have before. And some guys go crazy. Some guys will sell, 30 or 40 pounds a week. But most of them average about, 10 or 20 pounds a week. And it's just a couple bucks. It's something they can let their wife do. And so everybody in the community knows Bahidio's wife has always got coffee. So they don't have to walk all the way to the store. They run over that Bahidio's house, and he'll sell it on credit with interest. And so he charges 10% interest. And so if you go buy it for 40 lempira, you have to, on credit, you have to pay 44 lempira on payday. So, he's a smart kid. Everything we've ever done for him, he's made money off of. We started a barber shop. Ranger Dan, do you know Jose? Have you guys met? His name's Jose Alevant. He's got Third Day Seguin in Seguin, or Third Day Coffee in Seguin, Texas. I think he's a Marine. No, he was a Navy guy. Probably won't associate with him, right? Uh-oh. Have I got you cut off, or have you got you cut off? All right. Can you hear me
I got
now,
my
Dan?
mic off.
Okay.
I couldn't get my mic to go on. Yeah. I met Jose. We went. I went down to Texas for Coffee Fest. It was in Texas, and we went down there and hung out with him there. Great guy. But yeah, he's a Navy guy. Next time you talk to him, ask him if he's a coastie.
If he's a what now?
A coastie. Coast Guard.
Okay.
Say, aren't you a coastie?
I'll start saying Coast Guard every time which is a valid branch of the military. Let's don't get that out there. But
Yeah. But that'll get him going.
Yeah, I'll have to. Next time I introduce him, I'll say he was first made on a cutter or something like that. He
Yeah.
inspected fishing boats for the Coast Guard or something like that. Yeah, didn't you check fishing license on the Coast Guard or something? No, he's a pretty good guy, but I like him. He's one of those just accidental, meetings we had. Back when I first started trying to sell roasted coffee, I saw him on there, and I just sent him a friend request, and he said he never accepts friend requests without, for somebody that had no connection. Usually I look and you have 20 mutual friends, and so then I'll stop and look at them, and so he was talking on there, and I said, give me a call sometime, and he said, well, yeah, I'll be free, it's such and such. And so we ended up calling each other and talked for like 4 hours. And then a couple of weeks later, he drove down from Texas and came to the house. And he's just been a really good guy to know. And he does a lot of stuff with PTSD for the military too. And I've seen some guys, there's another guy, Tony Yard. He's over in Texas somewhere. But this year, there's 2 places I'm going to go to. I got to meet. I'm going to deliver some coffee to you. Me Light Coffee. He's just right outside of Indiana, over in Island, Kentucky. And then I've got to go. I'm going to visit Seguin over Jose, and then Troy Yard. I'm not sure. Troy might have been an Army guy. I'm not sure. He was stationed up in New York, and then he retired and moved down to Texas. He's got T&T Coffee Roasters is Troy's company name. It's Troy, and then whatever his wife's name is, I guess starts with a T also. But my boy Eli's wanting to come up and see your coffin that you pull behind the motorcycle. Isn't it coffee so strong?
It's been in the garage. The bike's been broke down. Yep, that's it. Coffee's so good it wakes the dead.
There you go.
Coffee's so good it wakes the dead. That's it.
My hot keto instructor, we were talking the other day, and he was talking about, I only like strong coffee. I buy Death Wish. And I was like, screw that, man. I'm going to make you up some. So I blended him some coffee. I blended him some of the full natural that we were talking about. The full natural is so strong, I don't like drinking it in a cup of coffee. I only put 20% in to like... and the other 80% is just a regular canal wash of the same variety. I only do the full natural in a cold brew, or I'll do it in my espresso shot. But I don't enjoy drinking the full natural. My wife does, but I don't like drinking just the full natural as a cup of coffee. It's just so strong. But this year, talking about strong, I planted a bunch of Robusta this year. Well, I haven't planted it. I've got it out in my seed house. I've got to go look at it in the morning. But I think I've got about 120 plants that'll go in probably at the end of July. We're going to put them in a section of the farm where we can irrigate, so that because we're planting it off season. You generally plant during the rainy season here, so it'll get washed and all. Hey, Garrett, are you muted on purpose, or did I mute you by accident?
Yeah, no, I muted myself on purpose. Just
okay.
So if the kids are getting ready for bed, it's not so noisy.
Oh, okay. All right. Now do what you need to do. I just didn't want to accidentally delete you or mute you. But no, it's been one of the most frustrating times in my whole life having a coffee farm, and it's been one of the most fun things. I did a podcast in Joplin a month or 2 or 3 ago. And the guy was like, well, what is the hardest lesson you learned when you started farming coffee? I said, the fact that I was an idiot. That was probably the hardest thing. That was the hardest pill to swallow. And, I come in here. I've always thought that, one of my earlier jobs was I went into this factory one time to do a little bit of welding. and two or three things I noticed right off the bat that they were doing that was just so unproductive, and you got people in the factory that don't give a crap whether they're productive or not. And it was a new manager. He didn't really know the business. And so I'm sitting there welding on this thing. And I'm like, if you guys would simply, stage this differently and put two people down here instead of having three people over there, it would go a lot faster, And then I redesigned one of their machines to where it was using 60 gaskets a day. I got it down to 20, and the gaskets were $2.50 a piece. And then I was able to build them for like 50 cents a piece, and just things like that. And I'm not saying I'm some kind of genius, but I can look at something like a lot of people can and not reinvent the wheel, but say, if we round the corners on that square wheel, it might help, And so when I came to Honduras, I had a lot of those big ideas, and a lot of people I learned, when you're a boss here, you're a boss and nobody questions you. And so these guys were just weren't willing to accept my idea. And I had this thing, well, I'm paying you. If I tell Bill to jump, he should jump, and Bill said, I ain't going to jump, and so I'll just quit. And so I've had this particular farm for, in July will be 9 years. I went through more farm bosses in the first year than I did the following 8 years. And always, and I want the farm boss, because it's not rocket science. I want the farm boss to leave here. I don't want him to be here for the rest of his life. Like Gustavo. Gustavo came in. He's this little short, unassuming guy. But right off the bat, you could just tell you're talking to him. He sees you doing something. He's looking at it and he's wanting to learn how to do it. And so I just asked him one day, have you ever put PVC pipe together? And he's like, no. And why would he? Most of the houses here don't have running water. So how are they going to know how to put PVC pipe together? They don't know how to change a bicycle tire because they don't have a bicycle. Things that we take for granted, how are you going to develop a mechanical mind, if you've never done anything like that or never had the opportunity? And so, I said, well, come on over here. Let's, and I said, there's a couple rules. If the pipe is wet, you don't need to glue it. And, you don't need to slop so much glue on there because, my gosh, PVC glue is expensive here. And I said, there's just certain rules. You learn those rules, and it's fairly simple. And the guy just paid attention and did what I told him to do. And I never had a pipe pop apart. And so then when we were wiring this room one day, I said, have you ever done any wiring? And he's like, no. And I'm like, again, you've got neutral, you got ground, and you got hot. And you always use the same color and you're never going to have a problem. And well, I don't want to say that. I've screwed up some stuff, but and the guy just took to it. And so I told my wife, I said, man, he's not going to, in 6 months, he'll be ready to leave here. He's got too much potential. And so now the guy's a contractor. I'm meeting with him on Saturday, and he's going to build our new classroom. And I'll draw it out, and he'll do the parts takeoff for it, and he'll turn in the parts list, and I'll send a payment in for it. And Monday morning, he'll be ready to start work, and I won't have to touch it. I'll just let him go, and he'll do it exactly like you say. And he'll give you a call and say, listen, this doesn't seem right. The door shouldn't be upside down. And I'm like, you're probably right. And, but where most of the guys would just put the door in upside down, and so, and they've done that before. The guy's like, well, I didn't know what this was. I'm like, well, it says E, and that's for electricity. So that's an outlet for electricity. So what he did was just do nothing. So when he was laying the blocks, he didn't put that little tube in there. We'll run a 1-inch tube through the blocks, and it'll pop out that hole that says E for electricity. And then I'll be able to pull wires through that conduit, later on. Nah, he did the whole freaking wall with no plug-ins in it. So now I got to take my grinder and cut a groove in the wall. He finished it. He smoothed out the concrete, everything. And, but the other 3 walls, he did them. And so there's no rhyme or reason. He just, just did it. But every window had a plug-in under it because it's going to be a coffee shop. And so I wanted everybody to be able, and that's very common here. When somebody walks in, they plug their phone in, and here on the farm, every building has outlets on the outside, and they're up high to where they can plug them in. And when it's raining, the phones won't get wet because some of the workers don't have electricity in their house. And so they can come here and plug their phones in. And, so it was just a common sense kind of thing that we did, help out a little bit. But yeah, it was really frustrating. I had a lot of ideas and they weren't willing to, change. Or if you were to ever do something that, even accidentally humiliate somebody, or, they call themselves maestros if they're like a contractor, and they would just quit, or if they think you're mad, you can't have a bad day. They're really sensitive to your feelings. And so if, I come out of the house, even though I'm pissed off at Julia or one of the boys, I come out just mad at the world. And, man, they quit talking. They start looking down. They avoid you because they just figure you're mad at the whole world. They're going to stay out of your way. So it's difficult. And I just had to make sure that, like tonight, I'll go up to the project, and I'll take a pot of coffee up there, and I'll sit with the guard for a couple hours, or as late as it is, probably 30 minutes. But I'll take him some coffee up there. We'll just sit and talk and eat some bread, drink some coffee for a few minutes, and just trying to get to know them a little more one-on-one, to where they will talk to you or something like that. And which is hard to do. And especially with the women aren't, they won't look at you. If I walk by the cupping lab is a selecting building, and there's like a 14-foot table, and there'll be 10 women on that table, and there's 4 training tables, and then there's the big inspection table. And so all those women in there would just be talking, and you just hear them talking and laughing. Second I turn the knob on the door, it's dead silence. Everybody's looking down and doing their work, And so, it was hard to get them to where they would talk to me, because they don't talk to me. They won't ask me a question. They'll ask the jefe or the gerente. They'll ask one of those people, and then that person will come to me. And so I wanted it to be where they could talk to me. So, I just had to get in there and kid around with them a little bit, or, just to get them to talk to me a little bit. And then now I can go in there now and pretty much talk to any of them. But there's definitely, I think the rich farmers, they like that separation. I had one of the farmers up the road, and he was an elder in our church. And he saw that the workers were in the truck with me, like in the cabin of the truck with me. And he said, they need to ride in the back. He said, because they need to know that separation. And I said to him, I said, where does it say that in the Bible? But it actually does say that in the Bible. It says if you're, he quoted me, and I can't do it verbatim, but like if you're a slave or a servant, be a good slave or a good servant. And I'm like, well, I think that's a little out of context, because it also says, that we're all equal, and but they sort of believe that here, and you're not going to ever see a farmer, driving around. You'll see a farmer in a big fat double cabin, 4-door truck by himself, and there'll be 20 guys in the back of the truck. And that's just sort of the way it is here. And one of the pluses to our farm is that, we have a bank, we loan money, we go and do work at their houses and things like that. All of my key workers have come in and eaten breakfast, and you want to see somebody awkward. I brought Isabel in, and she just sat at the table, and I put eggs on her plate, and I put, I forget what all I made for breakfast. And she just looked over at Anna, and Anna's like, yeah, because she had no idea why we were bringing her in the house. And so my manager, Anna, was in there. And so she just sits down, and she didn't know what she was supposed to do, And then when the women get up from the table, they all go straight over the sink and wash all the dishes. And you could hit them with a stick, and they're not going to not wash dishes. They're going to wash every one of the dishes, and they just turn the water on, rub them with some water, and drop them up in the little drying rack, but they're going to do that. They're going to stay busy all the time. When something's not going on, they're going to pick up a broom or a rag and they'll start dusting or sweeping or something. And every day when they're through selecting coffee, they sweep the floor up and put it in a little bag. And at the end of the week, that bag is pretty big. And a lot of times if it's not a time when we're roasting coffee, they'll divvy it all up between them. And they take it home with them and roast it on their little adobe stove. And so just as like a little bonus, but if it ever gets to the point where they're like, 50, 60 pounds a week, then we're going to have to, readdress it. But right now they save what they sweep up. But 2 women stay behind every day after quitting time and clean up the whole lab. And so, and that's, we're an FDA lab, so everything has to be, sanitized at the end of the day. But that's just the way they do it, and they don't ask for any extra pay. And it just takes them about 15 minutes to wipe down everything. But there's 15 women on a 6-day work schedule. And so 2 women, every day stay back and clean up. And so it's just what they do, no matter where they work at, they do that. The guys will all bring their shovels and stuff up, and they'll get, separate and go to the different water hydrants. They'll clean the shovels off at the end of the day, and they go stack them against the wall. That's just, what they do. And so it's 7 o'clock in the morning, they're in the field working, and they'll work until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they stop and bring their stuff back up. So there's just, it's just a cultural thing that they're used to doing, that, they just keep doing it that way. So it's not going to try to change the world, but just try to make that, that little difference. When we first came, they wouldn't come knock on the door. They'd stand 20 feet away from the door and like either whistle or make a noise, or, sometimes they'd yell your name out, but they won't come up to your house and knock on the door. That's just something they don't do. And because they're not used to coming to the boss. And so they're, even my farm boss wouldn't come and knock on the door. And so it's definitely a big cultural difference, how they do things here. And that hierarchy is something that'll probably never change, So we just got to teach them that we're, love on them a little bit and be nice to them, treat them fair, and take care of a lot of their needs. And they've come to, respect that, appreciate it, I hope. But, and we pretty much have the same people working here all the time. There's a lot of different people that float around that don't like working at the same place. But most of our workers, we have about 12 key guys that work here all the time. And Anna, she's our farm manager. But other than that, Santos runs the entire farm, and Bahidio runs the project and all the little things. And then Anna runs the house, the patio, the cupping lab, and the bodega. And so everybody sort of has their little subset that they're in charge of. And then they all have meetings, twice a week to sort of see how everything's going and coordinate with everybody and all that good stuff. But
Anna grows a good coffee bean too, let me tell you.
Yeah, she's just got an amazing story, and I know you guys don't have all night, but she when she came here, I sort of noticed her, and she seemed, some people look at you and you can tell they're thinking. Bahidio's daughter's that way. He's got like a 10-year-old daughter, and she just looks at me. And so in Santiago's got a daughter that's about 8, and she like looks at me, and you can tell she's thinking. She's planning something out, or she's absorbing what you're saying. But Anna was sort of the same way. She like listened to detail and listened to instructions, and she would just try to do exactly what you told her to do. And so I moved her in the cupping lab pretty quick. And then the girls in the cupping lab, for whatever reason, went to her and were asking her questions. And she just sort of had a natural, leadership quality to her. And then when I tried to talk to her about being boss, she was like, no, I only went through the 5th grade, and I can't be a boss. And I'm like, well, you can be anything I say you can be, you know? And she's like, no, I can't do that. And she just kept spouting off that same fifth grade thing. And so I told her, I said, well, you realize, you know, your pay is going to go up a lot. And she's like, no, I can't do that job. And so then I finally just went to the women, and they would ask me a question, and I would say, I don't know. Anna's the boss. Go ask Anna. So I just kept sending them to her. And then I bought her a shirt. I had her a monogram shirt with the farm logo and had her name on it. And it said Jefa, which is boss in Spanish. And she wouldn't wear it, you know. But then eventually it just got to where, you know, the girls were going to her. She was a lot more relaxed about, you know, being in control of a few things. And so then basically one day I just changed her pay. So she never really accepted the job of, you know, of Jefe. I just started paying her more, and the women went to her, and she just started doing it. And then one day I bought her a shirt that said general manager on it, and really increased her pay, and then gave her a ton of responsibility. And then when she really shined was during COVID, you know, managing all the things she had to do during COVID. And she just really, you know, she's just really been good at it. And, you know, there's a bunch of times I made her cry a couple times, you know, and, you know, and I set her down and said, you know, just because I'm mad doesn't mean I'm mad at you. And, you know, I said, you know, you've got to just sort of, you know, if you think I'm mad at you, come and ask me, because I'll tell you I'm mad at you, and this is why I'm mad at you, and what are we going to do about it? You know, don't think I'm mad at you, and you know, that kind of stuff, because that's just never going to get resolved. I said, just come and say, did I make you mad? Or, you know, and I said, and I'll tell you. And most of the time, no, it's I'm mad at somebody, you know, for doing something stupid. And I do stupid things. But when we went and tried to get Anna's coffee, she wasn't able to sell it to us because she had a contract, and the contract was payable in Uba. And so she'd gone to the mill, and they had loaned her money for organic fertilizer, which is just the husk off the coffee and the cherry off the coffee. But they put a dollar value on that, and they add 4% interest per month, which is 48% a year. And then she had to repay that note in the equal value of coffee. And so she could only pay it back with coffee. So I couldn't go in and pay her debt off for her. So that year we missed out. The second year I bought the fertilizer for her. And I think that that Jose over at Third Day, he gave me a couple $100, and a couple of other guys threw in some money. And we just went and bought the fertilizer for the entire year for her farm. And so she put down a conventional fertilizer. And when we had her coffee cupped, it cupped 85.5. And then we found out that there's a registration list, and you can look on it and see who's registered as an organic producer. And her farm was certified organic, and without her knowledge. The mill went and had her farm certified organic. So they're paying her $34 below commodity grade coffee price. And they were selling it as specialty grade coffee because it's 85.5 and organic. And she had no idea, and she didn't get a penny out of it. So the first year we sold her coffee, Saturday Morning Coffee, Brian and Ben, they own Saturday Morning Coffee. They paid her $5.25 a pound, and they paid the shipping for her coffee. And she didn't know what to do. They paid it in two parts. You know, they got the load. They paid up half up front. And so Julia sent her the money. And then once they got it and cupped it, they paid me the other half. And when she got the payment for half of her coffee, she sent us a letter. And she said, this is more than, you know, what I got last year for my entire farm. She had no idea that was only money. And then the next year she sent more coffee, and she ended up with $3,500 US. And so in the first 2 years, we paid the processing, we paid the shipping to the States, we paid for the grain pros, the burlaps, we paid for everything. And so she got all of the money. So she had $3,500 cash in her bank account. And she said, what am I supposed to do with this? She said, that's like 4 years pay, and she's like, I don't know what to do with it. And so she said, do you think they would let me take it out and hold it? And so I said, I bet they will. Let me call. And so I called the manager of the bank, and he said, I'll do better than that. He said, I'll order up a bunch of 20s, which is like is a $20 bill for them, but it's the equivalent of 90 cents. He said, I'll get it all out and stack in $20 bills, 20 of their dollar bills, $3,500, which is 80 something thousand of their dollars in 20s. He said, I'll put it in a box and let her hold it. And then we'll take her picture, and then I'll put it right back in. And so they made a picture of her holding that stack of money. But yes, she loans money to people interest free. The guys that work on the farm. And she bought a washing machine the first year. And then the second year she bought a dryer, a refrigerator. And so you go in her house now, and she's finished out her adobe house. They'll put concrete on the adobe blocks and finish it out. And it just makes the house look completely different. But she's got microwave, refrigerator, blender, She hasn't bought a gas stove. She's afraid of the gas. So she still cooks with sticks in an adobe stove inside her kitchen. But, they modernized her bathroom, and her husband owns a truck now. And so they've made quite a bit of changes just from that. She had a freaking bumper crop. This year she has 13 bags of coffee. And I don't have any idea how we're going to sell it, but we're getting ready to ship it. And so we'll have to start figuring out some homes for a lot of it. And some of them have some really good, the Stargy Moore. Somebody made a bid on it. I was supposed to call them today. So they might have bought the whole lot. But if not, that Stargy Moore is a really nice coffee. I haven't learned how to roast it yet, but it's a really great coffee.
Have you thought about changing like on the website for the green, it's just $6 a pound. You choose what kind. Have you thought about tiering the pricing based on what the bean is or what the lot is? Like maybe for hers, $6.50 a pound, or for the one you just mentioned, $7 a pound, or is it just easier to just say it's kind of all the same price wise?
No, it is that way. Just currently we have a washed coffee. A washed Limpera is $6. The red honey is $6.25.
Okay. Okay.
The full natural, it's like $8 a pound, but it cupped at 88.25. And so, yeah, the prices are tiered a little bit. Perry Nama, I think, is $6.75. But where we make our profit, and I don't tell this to everybody, but saying that, and I'm putting it on a podcast, but roughly last year or this year, we sent $10,000 from the United States to the farm, and we produced $90,000 worth of coffee. And so the farm, green coffee wise, the farm is going to operate in a deficit. It's never going to have a profit. You can't do projects, pay above average, and produce a good coffee and be competitive in the market. Like I bought some Robusta for one of my customers the other day, and I paid $1.90 a pound for it. I buy decaf from that same customer, and I pay $2.45 a pound. I can't grow it that cheap, and so, those are big mills that are buying coffee below production price because the farmer doesn't have an option, just like Anna. But we have to hold back. Like right now, there's no Perry Nama green on the website because I have to hold back enough, according to last year's sales. I have to hold back enough so that I can make it to August and have, roasted coffee. Like yesterday, I ran out of Bourbon. It's because somebody here mislabeled it, and it went into the mix with some other coffee, and I lost my entire crop of Bourbon. I had 50 pounds. And so they mixed it with another coffee. And so my best cupping coffee, 89.2 coffee, 89.25 coffee got lost.
Wow.
And so It just got poured in with something else. And so we had a 50-pound bag of green yellow Bourbon. So it didn't last the whole year, you know. But so we have to, you know, I have some Marsellesa that's in the bodega, but I just don't have enough to sell it green. So we're trying to do better. Last year we just had a horrible production, and so we didn't have a lot of coffee at all. And so we quit pushing our green coffee on a lot of the smaller, you know, the home roaster guys, because we had to maintain the contracts with people, with guys like Ranger Dan. He was wanting 8 or 9 bags. And yesterday I shipped him 5 because I didn't have enough to ship him 5. Alaska wanted 16. I shipped them 8. Me Like Roasters in Kentucky wanted 6, and I shipped him 4. And so I just didn't have enough coffee. If I'd have given them all what they wanted, I would have been out of my biggest seller, which is the washed Lempira.
And how long was it you said the stuff that you're going to be taking care of right now for it to be processed and then on the container and hit stateside?
Right now it's in individual bags. So we're going to start putting it into the, well, you have to wait until they print the burlap bags. So once the burlap bags are printed, which we're praying it's Friday, then we'll pick them up and start filling them. And then we'll load the container. It'll take me to take it into town, and it's like a 6-hour drive to town and back to get all those bags there, you know, and then it'll go in line. So just roughly, I'm thinking, you know, my hope is 6 weeks, but you know, I'm thinking maybe 9 or 10 weeks before it gets there. You just can't ever tell because I don't have a full container. If I had a full container of coffee, then it would just go right out. But I'll have to wait. I'm only going to have with Anna, Bahidio, Miguel, all the guys that are sending coffee with me. I'll still have about room for another 90 bags of coffee in a container. So I'll have to, the exporter will round up 90 bags of coffee to go in with mine. And as soon as he does, then it'll ship. But I'm going to tell him I need it sooner rather than later. And so need to hurry up and get there. And that's an option for you guys if you want to like market your coffee as nowhere in the world can you get Cafe San Diego except for with Garrett. His whole farm produced 120 pounds this year. I only bought, it was his first year, so I only bought like 35 pounds of it. So, you know, if you get to where your market's built up, I could set you up with one specific guy. And I've got 4 guys that produce less than 150 pounds a year. You know, so when you get to that point, you know, we could fix you up with a guy where you could only have his coffee, you know, and then I can always, you know, I can buy what you can't use and I'll just market it as a blend. And you could singly market as, you know, because like Alaska, I've got a contract with Alaska. It's called AK Coffee Company. And their motto is, this is the only place in Alaska that you can buy this, you know, Legacy Farms coffee. And so I have a contract not to sell it to any in Alaska, but them. And so, and I'm going to do that with a couple different, you know, companies this year. Me Like Coffee is going to have exclusive rights for Kentucky. Because he buys quite a bit of coffee. But yeah, a lot of people, I think there's a lot of market value in saying you have the only one in the world. And so until Anna's farm, you know, once we started fertilizing it with real fertilizer, the coffee started growing and producing. Per acre, Anna's farm puts out twice what my farm puts out. Because it's a small farm and she's got a lot of time to work in it and she grooms it better than I'm able to do mine. And so this year she put out almost twice per acre what my farm put out.
Wow.
And yeah. And so, and that's a good thing for her and a more difficult thing for me because last year she had 8 bags of coffee. This year she's either got 13 or 15 150-pound bags of coffee. And, so that's a lot.
I mean, it's good though. I enjoyed mine. I just got done using mine. I mean, you know me, I told you already, it's cold brew season for me. So I go through a lot of coffee through this time of year because it takes so much to make cold brew. That's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking. 150 pounds. I'm like, I could probably do that myself in a year. Start with cold brew. So
well, I don't pay attention to how much coffee I drink because I go and scoop it out of my containers. All hold 16 pounds. So I just go pull 30 grams out, and grind it and drink it. But when I come to Honduras, like Customs looked in my bag when I came up in May, and they're like, I had 4 1-pound bags in my bag. And he said, we sell coffee in Honduras. And I'm like, yeah, I know. This coffee was grown in Honduras, shipped to the United States, roasted, and now I'm bringing it back. Because when I get here, I got a coffee farm, but I don't have any coffee. And so I'll have to go in the cupping lab and roast it on my sample roaster, but then you got to wait 2 days to drink it. And I'm not waiting 2 days, I want to drink some coffee. I already had 2 pots since 4:00 this afternoon, and I'm fixing to do another pot and go up. The guard will be there all night. So I'm going to go up and I'll take the 4-wheeler up and sit around with him. And I think Eli made me some cookies and cupcakes. So we'll go up there and eat some cookies and cupcakes and drink some coffee before I go to bed.
Is it just you down there this time?
Yeah. Man, the ticket this time was like $1,700. Oh. And I usually wouldn't have come, but there's a group of people contacted me last week or a couple weeks ago, and they wanted to visit a coffee farm. And when I was talking to them, they said, well, we're going to be in Honduras and we have 2 free days. And one of them was the 21st, one of them was the 24th or 22nd. And they said, we want to come out and visit your farm. And I'm like, probably, I don't think I'm going to be there, but I can arrange a visit. And they're like, well, we really wanted to visit with you, blah, blah, blah. And so then I find out they're a medical dental breed and they come to Honduras every year. And so I just started building a dental clinic on my farm here. And so I said, yeah, I'll be there. And so they're coming up Saturday, the 22nd or somewhere around in there. And the idea is, we wine them and dine them a little bit. So I've got to roast a crap load of coffee, 12 ounces at a time. So everybody gets a 5-ounce bag of coffee or something. So I brought my stamp and blank bags with me. But the idea is to try to get them on their next trip to come here. And so like the classroom we're building for the kids is going to have a micro kitchenette and a tiny bathroom shower inside of it. So we'll be able to take all the chairs out, and I build wooden bunk beds that we can stack 3 high. And so we can change up the configuration in the room according to who's in there. And something's biting me. And then, we can house, I think we can house 12 people in the children's library, 50 or 60 in the church building. So we can handle pretty much any kind of a group. When I'm finished with everything, there'll be 3 full bathroom shower units just on the project. And we got another 4 down here. And so we can sleep people in the cupping lab. We've slept 8 people in the house. And so we can do, quite a bit of, setups, however we need to. And we're closing down one of the solar dryers. And it's just raised beds. And we're going to do that. And then we're going to start having groups, bring sleeping bags and leave the sleeping bags when they go back to the States. And so where the beds that we used to dry coffee on, we're going to stick guys in there and throw a sleeping bag and let them sleep in there. Because most of them don't really care where you sleep. They want some good food. They want to do a project that's helping people. They want Wi-Fi, and they're happy, and so they don't really care. Versus you'll get some people occasionally that are like, ooh, this is it. I'm like, yeah, this is it. And
here's your coffee.
I had a group came from a church in North Carolina. If I knew the church, I'd call them out on it. But they were here 3 days and left, you know, and they didn't finish their project or anything. They went and checked into this place. It
Wow.
was something resort and suites. And, you know, they just, it was too rough for them, you know, and I'm like, you're not doing anything that, you know, my whole family hadn't lived in for, you know, years. You guys are actually staying in a hotel that's, you know, a lot nicer than my house. And, no, they didn't, you know, they took 2-hour lunch breaks. You know, they weren't planning on really doing anything. But I'm thinking, you know, they took up donations to come here, you know, and a lot of them come on the exploratory trip, you know, and so that's what they were here for. They were going to spend 6 days, and that's what they wanted
Sanctified
to do.
tourism.
Yeah, and so, but then again, we had a group come and they were doing an exploratory trip, and they said, you know, we can only come for 3 days, and you know, they show up, and I'd mentioned that I needed some DeWalt batteries, and they bought them for us. They shut down our mailbox. They shipped so many books to the library. They bought $1,000 worth of books on Amazon and shipped them all at the one time. And we lost our APO box at the military base because of that. You know, just like, he's like, no more. You know, there's too many people are going crazy sending books. And so I've got to meet with the CO at the military base to see if he won't, you know, let us have it again. But, you know, it's a thing, you know, but they came, they said we can only come for 2 days because we both got jobs, and they wanted, you know, and generally you don't want to bring a group of 20 people to a foreign country and not know 100% what you're getting into. And, so they came up, but they worked the whole time, and they were up at 5:30 in the morning. They went out with me in the coffee truck. They went to the drying fields, you know, they were helping on projects and stuff. And, they were just a blessing and a joy. And he said, if I lived here, the first thing I'd do was triple the size of your back porch. He said, because this is where I'd spend every free minute of my time. And I'm like, man, I've thought about it, because I'd like to have a couple hammocks out here. But yeah, it's you get all different kinds. You know, you just have to work, go with the flow, sort of. But
My wife saw your short that you put out earlier today, and with the background, like when you just ride there, and she, I was like, look, that's his view from his back porch, and she goes, wow. So
Yeah, it looked gorgeous.
there's a clip on YouTube, and it's called, I don't know if you can look up a clip by the name, but it's called "That's My Banana." And so I walked out here one
that's
day,
kind of scary sounding. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's always a thing of bananas hanging on the porch. And so I walked up to the door, and there's a big old blackbird, and he's sitting on there just eating my ripe bananas. And so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna walk out there, he'll fly away. So I opened the door up, and it's like 10 feet from my back door. And he just sort of looked over at me and just started eating my banana again. And so I just said, hey, and he's like, just kept eating. And so I'm like, that's my banana. And he just sort of looked at me and just kept eating. And so I yelled at him 3 or 4 times, and finally he flew away. But he was hungry. He was going to eat the banana. He didn't care. But the same, we hang them because the chickens found out we had bananas on the back porch, and they'll come and they'll jump off the porch and just peck the banana and get a mouthful and then fly down. And then they'll walk back around, come up the steps, and do it again. And they'll jump up on the table, and then they'll jump to the handrail, and they'll walk over and they'll dive bomb the bananas. And so now we have to have a rope way out where they can't get to them to keep them from eating my ripe bananas. But no, I love bananas. Banana smoothies, banana bread, just bananas. It's and they're free. I like anything free. But we do have. I've told Bill before. We've got an apartment that we built just for that. And you see my little microphone I'm using tonight.
Oh yeah.
Bill sent me that.
That looks familiar.
Eli's like, I want to use that one. I'm like, okay, you can have that one.
Yeah,
But,
I gotta tell you that took a lot of giving to you too, because I got it as a gift from my kids a couple years ago when I was YouTubing.
Oh no!
On it, no, and it was fine. I explained to them, they're like, "What are you doing with it?" And I told them that this this guy named Ashley is this coffee thing, which they know my obsession with coffee now. And he's doing good work down in Honduras, and that microphone is going to go to another part of the world and do good and stuff down there. And they eventually kept, they got fine with it. Plus they also saw all the coffee and everything, and they're like my roasting buddies. They like fight over who gets to come out and sit with me as I'm roasting coffee. So.
Oh, I was tickled when Jonathan got interested in the roaster. Now he's hard-headed. I love him to death. He's my son, but he roasts his way and I roast mine, and I log every little detail and he's like, nah, that's good. And, and so, yeah, I came back from Honduras. He had roasted a couple roasts, and because you have to keep up with how many hours it is. And I hooked a Hobbs meter up to it so I could track that for greasing the bearings and all kinds of stuff. But I need to know about, you can go in when the bottom of the tank has got frost on it, it's getting pretty low, but that's outside and you're inside. And so I like to log how many hours, but now I've got a second Hobbs meter that's got a toggle switch on it. And so once I hit the gas, I hit that one. And then at the end, you shut the gas off and you might cool it for 10 minutes. So, the Hobbs is running, because it's measuring for me to grease the bearings and things like that. But then that second one is telling me how many hours I'm actually running the gas. And so that's what I want to know. I want to know how much it's taken me in gas, in time, to roast X amount of coffee, And I think right now, and I haven't been doing it that long, but right now I'm getting like 55 to 58 pounds an hour is what comes out, and I log it on my little roaster, and I'm doing 12-ounce batches, and I get 10.3 to 10.5 ounces out, and so I do my math on what the loss is, weight loss and stuff like that is. And it's something that occupies my time, keeps me off the streets. But I enjoy knowing, and with the gas thing, I don't want to spend the money to buy a second gas tank. And so my next step is one of those 350-gallon tanks. It looks like a giant bubble with a big thing on top of it. And so that's my next step, is to buy one of those. And I think they're like $700 or $800 each. I like owning my own because it's right by my building. My tank is pretty and white. It's not all scratched up. And if you get that exchange system, you're gonna get beat up tanks, and you never know what you're getting. And one time, twice here, but one time in the States, I got one that was leaking, and so I came out there 2 days later, and there was no gas in the tank. And they made it right, but still, if that had been in the middle of a roast, I'd have ruined a couple $100 worth of coffee, and I doubt they would have paid for that, But here I had a tank leak down in the house, and just luckily, nothing happened. But like a 25-pound tank, within a day, all the gas leaked out of it, and so that was pretty dangerous. And so now I've switched all the tanks over to a threaded system, and I put a acetylene gauge on the top of it, so there's no leak, and I can control the pressure and all that. So and my wife turns it off every time she's done using the stove, just to make sure, because everything here, you have to drive the tank into town and stuff like that. It's more of an ordeal to do stuff here than it is anywhere else, But no, man, this is the longest podcast ever, I think.
Go figure. You get somebody likes to talk, and this is what happens. Well, I think it's the most people I've seen on one podcast too at one time too. I was kind of hoping Drew was going to stay around, because now that I'm not that I'm trying to give up on this wonderful machine pictured behind me, but now that I'm getting into this hot air roasting, that sauna fresco is like the next stage up from the fresh roast. I didn't know that had a limit that you has to do the exact amount every single time, and I wanted to get a little more information on that, but he hopped off, and I didn't get a chance to ask him about it.
Is there anything kind of between the sauna fresco and the
price wise? Yeah, price wise, I think the artisan the Artisan 3. It would
Yeah.
be similar to what Drew has. I think he was. I was having a hard time hearing him when he first came on. I didn't know if that was just me. I was trying to just piece together the words and see what he was saying. But what was his roast capacity? Did you guys see that?
Was it 2.8 pounds? There was like you had
Okay.
to do 2.8, and you couldn't do any less or any more. Like it had to be 2.8 on it.
Okay.
And
But that's probably a good thing, though, because you're
yeah,
consistently, if you've got one consistent, because you're never going to have the same beans. There's a lot of
right,
variables, and
right.
so if you do your roast size the same, and that's why, even when I'm doing sample roasts, I know it's a huge waste, but I learned how to roast on that Hucky at 12 ounces, and so when I'm doing sample roasting and I only need like 3 ounces, I don't even need 3 ounces to do 5-cup cupping. Because it's 12 grams a cup, but I still go ahead and do the 12. And if it comes out 10.35 is my perfect. And if I'm popping out 10.35 ounces every single time, then I know all the roasts on the table. And I do 40 roasts when I do a cupping. And so, if I can keep them within that, that tolerance, then I know I'm at the same roast level for everyone.
Mm.
And even though marketing wise, when I sell it, I roast at different roast levels, but the cupper wants it at the exact same roast level so that he can have another control. We've got the portion size is the same, and we've got the roast level is the same. And so he's doing a cupping based on 2 exact variables. And so then from there, we can add or subtract according to, what I'm going to do with it. But yeah, the consistency is pretty good. But if you're doing 2.8 pounds, that the Artisan 3X, quality wise, I don't know. The only way you would find out was probably get on the Facebook page for Sona Fresco and then join the one for Artisan and start seeing your pros and cons, or find somebody that's got one. And did you say Drew was fairly close to where you live?
Yeah, he's in Troy, which is that's St. Louis area, so it's like 2.5 hours or so down. He's on the other side of the river, so it might be like closer to three and a half or so. But yeah, it's not
He's
far. I mean, every time we go back to Indiana, I'll either pass by Dan or pass Drew now that I know that. So
now Dan's a drum roaster, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Drew would let you hang out and watch him roast. A lot of the bigger guys, don't talk, don't ask questions, just
yeah,
a couple of times, I went to my first roaster. I said, can I come by one day when you're roasting? And when I got there, his assistant was like, well, he doesn't like talking when he roasts, and so the guy was, he's nicer on Facebook than he was in real person. And he's like, just write your questions down and you can talk when he's done roasting. So I sat there for like 3 hours and didn't say a word,
wow.
and I made a few notes, and afterwards he sat down and talked to me and stuff. But yeah, no, Drew seems like a super nice guy. He'd probably let you sit, go and roast a little bit. And
So I have to ask: is there any correlation between Legacy Farms and Legacy Roasters? When he said that, I was like, going, "Wait a minute."
Well, and that's and I thought I heard somebody say something about Legacy. So that's the name of his company.
Yeah, it's Legacy Roasters. I looked it up on Facebook on there.
Well, did you see? There's one in Tennessee also. He's a customer of mine. He's Legacy Coffee. I can't remember what his name is, but yeah, he lives in East Tennessee. I'm from West Tennessee.
Okay.
But they buy a bag or so of coffee a year. But other than the fact, I mean, we've trademarked Legacy Farms coffee.
Yeah.
But there's a Legacy Farms, and they raise llamas. And so at first, when you Googled it, Legacy Farms would come up the Legacy llama farm. But now I think we've been Googled enough that Legacy Farms coffee is coming up pretty high in the search. But
yeah,
no, and if we, because technically, we're all in competition,
Yeah.
But if we can help them, and I didn't realize how big his company was or something, or I would have, let him plug it. We're getting, anywhere from 6 to 12 people right now. Nobody's watching, but when it goes on to YouTube, we're getting 300, 400, 500 views.
Awesome.
And we're getting, we're getting 100 and something complete views on the ones that are 30 to 45 minutes. And so I need to, I need to learn how to break them into 30-minute segments or something like that. But when we were talking to some guys about marketing, they said you need a couple podcasts that are like 2 and 3 hours, because those are some that, people pick for, I'm driving to Oklahoma and it's a 3.5 hour drive, so you need sort of an assortment. And, when I went
I
to
have a
Joplin,
45-minute drive to work every morning, and I religiously watch something about coffee or something on the like every day on the way down. So
I used to listen to Roaster Joe a lot. He worked for Cafe Imports.
Okay.
But I used to listen to him. But I would listen to him while I was roasting, and I'd be making notes what he said, and that's how I changed a lot of my roasting methods. Because I'm not a master roaster or anything like that. When I've been on Jose's podcast a time or two, and he'll introduce me as a master roaster. But, I probably can roast Honduran coffee better than a lot of people, because that's 95% of what I've roasted. Yeah. And I'll do some trading, and a couple times a year, I'll get 20, 30, 60 pounds of a couple different countries, and just to try to roast something different. And then I roast a Sumatran. I rotate between a Mexican, a Sumatran, and an Indonesian decaf. Okay. And so I because I don't have a decaf, and so that's one of the coffees that I roast and sell, but I don't grow. And then the other day, Jose was asking me about a Robusta, and so he wanted 20 pounds of Robusta. So I think I ordered 30 pounds, and I ordered 20 for him and 10 for me. I'm just going to try it out a little bit. And so if you guys want some, I can get you a little bit of Robusta.
Is it
just to try it?
From my understanding, is it? Do they grow that down in Honduras, Robusta?
Not much, but I was in El Salvador one time, and this guy had a coffee farm, and he was growing Robusta on it. And I went into his Ramada, which is a nursery, and he had some some plants. And so I got a dozen Robusta plants.
Okay.
They grew real slow, and so I ended up cutting them all down. But I saved one just because the layman variety name is Julia, and that's my wife's name.
Yeah.
And so Eli, my 12-year-old, he's decided he's got a section of farm called Eli Mountain. And so we sell a roasted coffee that's called Eli Mountain Blend. And he came up with a blend, and he sells that. And it's our new number 2 coffee now.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, he decided, he came up to me. He said, what's your most popular brand? And I told him. And then he said, what's the second one? And I told him. And he said, why don't we blend those together? And I said, okay. And I said, then you get to name it. He said, well, I'm going to call it Eli Mountain. And so we did it just as a joke, not as a joke, but just, you got to give a kid a shot.
Sure.
And, right. and then it worked out. And so we started selling Eli Mountain Blend, and it's it's consistently, on average, it's our number 2 selling coffee. Wow. But through the door, it's the number 1 selling coffee. Wow. I don't know why, but it is. And so it's a trademarked secret to what the blend is, But then after that, he got to saying, well, do I grow those 2 coffees on my farm? And I'm like, yeah, you do. And so now he makes me figure out what lots came from his farm. And we're only using those lots from his farm in the Eli Mountain. He's like, okay. I don't want to lie to anybody, And I'm like, well, it's not important. It's Eli Mountain Blend, it's a blend. And it's like, well, I want it to come from my coffee. Can we do that? And so now it actually comes from his little farm. So now he's decided he wants to expand the brand. And so we're going to plant 100 Robusta plants on his farm. And then he also has a variety called Ica 2 that's on his farm. And so we're going to expand and do some blends with the Lempira, the Ica 2, and then in 3 years we'll have Robusta. And so he'll have, with 4 different types of coffee that you could process 2 to 3 different ways. He's got a pretty good, a batch to choose from, as far as blending wise. And I don't get real technical on my blends. I'll generally start out, let's just say we're going to blend Perinema and Lempira. I'll start out with 25% Lempira and 75% Perinema. And then I'll do 75% Lempira and 25% Perinema. And then I'll do 50%, 50%. And then we'll drink those 3 coffees. If I'm just doing a 2 coffee blend, in my mind, that gives me sort of the spectrum, and then I'll say, I like this, but it'd be better if it had a little more of this coffee than the other coffee. So then you could go 60-40 or, however you wanted to, but that's generally where I start out at. And then with our espresso blend, we ended up with 20%, 80. But on that one, we started out at like 35%, 65%. And the natural just overpowered you couldn't taste any of the washed coffee in it. And so then we backed it down to 20%. And you can watch the market, the people that are, consistently with Shopify, we can watch what people are buying. And so as we improved it, and we asked people, what they think of it, and they were saying, I liked it, but it's just a little bit too strong. And so we backed it down to 20%. And then the 20% natural, 80% washed. And that's a really good seller and people buy it. We are going to change the name because a lot of people think that's an espresso coffee for an espresso maker. But the idea was it was a espresso kind of coffee. It tastes similar to a shot of espresso through your Mr. Coffee or, via a pour over. So we need to relabel a little bit. But because if I was going to sell something for an espresso, it would be 100% pure, full, natural coffee. That would be the best route to go. But it all depends on what you're wanting, and different people want different things. So you just sort of have to try the market. And sometimes if your coffee isn't selling well in a new market, instead of changing the coffee, most marketing guys would tell you to change the name first and give that a try. Because some people a lot of people don't understand coffee, and a lot of people think a blend is going to be a superior coffee, where it's just simply a different flavor. And most time it's the preference of the guy who blends it, and he's just rolling the dice thinking, well, I really love this. Let's see if the market really loves it. And still, it's, most of the time it's 2 great coffees that are just put together. And so, and everybody, when I pick up a new customer, I'll ask them if they want a trademark blend, and we'll put together something for them that's just, Bill's Super Blend or something. And then you can try, I'll send you a bunch of little 2-ounce samples, and then you can, start mixing and matching. And then usually I'll put a couple of things together for you, so you'll have a baseline to start with. And when I do, it's those 3 mixes that I start with. I'll send you that, and then I'll send you about a dozen little 2-ounce things, and you can, break them down an ounce at a time or half an ounce at a time and play with it and find what you like, and then make your own thing.
It's gonna be Billy's Bean Barn, by the way. That's what I'm.
There you go, man.
Billy's Bean Barn is what I decided I'm going to
And then when you have a sale, it's the Billy's Bean Barn Bonanza.
There you go.
There you go. Blowout Bonanza.
Yeah, blowout Bonanza, even better.
No, but we had this is a question for Garrett. I was curious, Garrett, since you've been roasting on your own, have you ever, I call it in the wild, have you ever ran into another roaster in the wild just randomly that you didn't know roasted?
Well, so the guy I talked to about roasting, he's a guy I knew who ran a music store in Illinois that I used to be a music buyer at a Christian bookstore. Okay. And so I had access to all the major label stuff, but I would make a trek from Fort Wayne, Indiana to Wheaton, Illinois to visit True Tunes Music, because the guy there had all this independent underground music. And so that guy, years later, he wrote a book, and he mentioned that he was actually a home roaster. And I'm like, I didn't know that. So when I was looking at it, I actually approached him and said, what do you use? Because these are the ones, and he's the one that said, I use a Be-More. And
Yeah.
so it was conversation with him that made me say, I'm going to do this. But I mean, we've got tons of farmers markets around here, and every single one of them, you probably have 4 or 5 different vendors that are
Yeah.
local roasters.
Oh,
A
wow.
number of the coffee shops. I mean, there's a great coffee shop that I just now found out about, but they've been open for several years. They're not right in my neighborhood, which is why I didn't know them. But Cultivate Coffee, I actually bought an extra 5 pounds of the Lempira washed so that I could bring it over to Cultivate just to say, you got to try playing with these beans, because they're all about sourcing beans from the farmers as much as they can, and farmers that are making a difference and an impact for their community. So I'm like, this totally lines up with what Legacy is doing. And
Yeah.
but I haven't run into like just normal people that
Right.
aren't at the farmers market or kind of in regular
Normal.
circles. I get a
Normal
lot
people.
of like, people know I'm the coffee guy.
Yeah.
But I haven't. Have you run into any
Well, I
other
had my first
roasters?
one. I had my first one this last week, and I've been talking to Ashley about it a little bit. But we have a non-for-profit here in town that's just starting up that I'm now on the board for. That's it's a cafe that's geared toward the mission is geared towards aged out adoption, aged out foster kids,
So
and
this
they're
one just does the same. When we're done, um, stay on, and or I'll find you on Facebook, and I'll send
okay.
you some information. Get some. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
go ahead.
so this is so they've the president and vice president of the board married they're married, Amy and Daniel Martell is their name, and they started this Rooted 242 in town, and it's a bakery. She's an excellent baker, and she's made a cafe out of it, and so that's kind of gearing it. That's the one side of it. Next to that cafe, they bought the building next to it, and that's a community space that they've opened up for supervised visits, and a training room and everything for foster parents and everything coming in. And then the phase 3 is going to be the upstairs, which is going to take a good deal of money, but the upstairs has like 4 apartments that they're going to gut out and redo for aged out youth that could come and rent it out for cheaper, kind of give them a foothold while
Yeah,
learning how to balance their checkbook and do all that stuff and kind of make their way out into the world on there. Well, um, she graduated from the same Christian college that I graduated at here in town, and we had a fellow graduate that running a coffee roastery in someplace. I want to say it's Kansas, Nebraska area or somewhere out that direction. But he just opened up, and she was getting coffee from him. Well, he's been swamped, so she hasn't been able to get consistency enough. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could do something with Legacy Farms coffee, roast it on a small basis, put it on a shelf, and then have that fund the coffee for the
oh,
store
that's cool. Yeah,
or something like that, and kind of go that direction for it. And then, so I was talking about that at my first board meeting this last Monday. And while I was talking about it, the local preacher was in there because his wife's on the board. And he's like, "Did you say coffee roasting?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I do. I coffee, roast at home and whatnot." He's like, so we started talking. And then he's like, "Well, I do too. I do it on a small basis." And he goes, "I don't have anything fancy. I just do it on a popcorn popper." And I was like, "Oh, I've got one of those at home." I mean, a fresh roast is nothing more
yeah.
than a glorified popcorn popper. It's just a really hot one, as far as is concerned. But and he goes, "Yeah, I just use a regular popcorn popper." And so we kind of joked around, because I was like, "Well, if I did that, I've got one of those, and my wife would kill me because she'd never be able to use popcorn again." And
Yeah.
and as far as is concerned, because she's not a coffee drinker. Which, by the way, Ashley, your name is kind of a cuss word in our house as of this morning, because that little bit of caffeine in that cherry tea kept my wife buzzing all night.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. I assumed that the entire coffee plant had caffeine as a defense mechanism. So the tea made from the cherry probably had caffeine. But I was drinking it the other day, and I actually just threw it in a French press so I could, like, kind of keep it hot, pour some more water in, let it do its thing. But I'm assuming that has caffeine.
Well, I asked Ashley about it last night because she wanted to have a cup of it because I asked her to try it because I'm not a tea person. I
Yeah.
just can't get into tea. And I was like, would you try this? Ashley's been asking people about what they thought about it and everything. And I wanted to give them some feedback on it. So she goes, yeah, sure. She'd try it. Does it have any caffeine in it? Because it was like 8:30 last night or 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And she's an English breakfast tea drinker, like religiously every morning to get her going and, in the morning. So I was like, hey, Ashley, what do you think? And he said, and I quote, oh, it has a little bit, was his exact quote to it. So she goes, okay, well, that's fine. I'll try it. And it was 8:30 at night, no big deal. So she tried it at that time and she loved it. I mean, when she first took a sip of it, she's like, it's okay. It's like more molasses, so it's kind of like, it's not coffee, but it's not tea. It's somewhere in between on it. And then as she kept drinking it, she's like, wow, this is really enjoyable. And she finished the whole cup of it and loved it. And then last night like, I think we were in bed for like an hour or something. And she leaned over to me and she goes, I think it's got a little bit more than a little caffeine in there because I'm still wide awake sitting here in bed. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good at 5 o'clock in the morning when she wakes up, when she's waking up. So.
Hey, Ashley, I do have a little feedback for you on that tea. The label said like 1/3 teaspoon for 8 ounces or something, or ounce. Sorry, 1/3 ounce per 8 ounces, and I took that to mean 1/3 of an ounce, and I did that, and it seems really weak. So then I thought maybe you meant 1 to 3 ounces per 8 ounces of water. So I put like a full ounce of the cherry in there, and that was delicious. But should I really be shooting for like 1/3 of an ounce of cherry? Because that seems really mild.
Well, you know what? That's some coffee. That's some cherry tea that a different lot that we just opened. But what I did was I let my wife and Anna and a couple of the other women. They did a cupping and they worked out there for a couple hours one day, and they came up with that mix as sort of a base to start from. Like we have two coffees here: a yellow Bourbon and a yellow Catuai. Both those are horrible. The yellow coffees do not make a good tea. It just tastes bad. But the other varieties, the Perinema, the Ikatu, and the Lempira, make a really good tea. So we may, I hate that because, we may have to change the mix and just because that's a lot more tea to the cup.
It was safe, but then I kept adding water to it and then letting it sit for almost like mate. I just drink it, add some more hot water to it, let it sit for a little while, drink some more, add some more hot water to it, drink it for a while. So,
well, we started out with the ladies came up with 1/3 of an ounce of tea, steep it for 5 minutes with 225 milligrams, which is about 8 ounces, I think.
I'll try it again.
And was sort of the mix.
They didn't crush it or blend it or anything like that, right? They just threw it in.
No, they just throw it in there.
I'll try it again.
But then maybe a different variety, because this year I processed 418 pounds. I have 1,000 pounds, but you have to we let it sit for a year. And when I went to this little school in Marcala, that guy said 2 years. He said, let it age for 2 years before you start selling it. It definitely has a different taste when it's fresh. But that year is our mark. So that coffee is a year old. We've had coffee. I've got a bag in there from 2019, and it seems like it gets stronger as it gets older. But I'm not sure which coffee I sent you. Which one of the teas that I sent. But when there was a guy that sort of mastered it around here, I got two guys. One of them masters it as a tea, and the other is a hard liquor. So they put yeast and all in it. And it's just to get drunk with. So they don't care about the taste. They just want it to make an alcohol. But Yvonne, the guy that was showing me, and he was telling me about how to age it. And that was sort of the mix that he recommended. And he makes a tea from the coffee flower, and he makes a tea from the husk, which originally te cascaria means the husk. It's tea from the husk. And this is actually te pulpa, which is tea, or te uva, which is tea from that cherry. And so we just call it tea for lack of a better word, because technically tea is from a leaf, but this is just the closest thing we could come. But Yvonne told me that he had it tested and it's 20% of the caffeine as a cup of coffee. But a lot of people have said, that they thought it had a lot more caffeine. I need to send it to K-State up in Manhattan, Kansas. K-State does a lot of testing. And actually the dirt samples that we take here on the farm, I found out they actually go to K-State in Kansas. So
cool.
yeah, it was crazy because he said, no, it takes a long time because we have to send it to Kansas. And I'm like, where do you send it in Kansas? And he's like, K-State. And I said, well, that's Manhattan. That's 4 or 5 hours or 2 or 3 hours from where I live. But so I've got to call them because I want them to do an antioxidant a test on it. And then I guess I need to have them do a caffeine test on it. I don't know what that'll cost, but I think it'd be beneficial if I did.
Now you told me earlier today that you dry it. So when you said you must have meant drying, like you dry it as long as you do the coffee, right? And then you age it after you dry it. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the coffee we age for 60 days, and the cherry we age for a year.
Okay.
And it's in that same bodega, the same type of bag, and it's got it's in a dehumidifier. A room with a dehumidifier. So the room is probably 25 by 25. And so it has a, big dehumidifier in it, just like, we keep the coffee at about 50% humidity. Okay. And then after a few months, it goes into a Grain Pro bag so that it doesn't get any drier, any wetter. And then it'll just age for a year. And every couple of months, they'll open it up and air the bag out, just in that room.
Yeah.
But like with the coffee, when we do a 90-day coffee, every month we take the coffee, we take all the coffee out of the building, and so we start from the very top, of the rack. We don't take a whole pallet out. We take the first top level out, and we go, we make a line, and then the second level. And then when we put it back in, we start from this end instead of the other end. So the coffee will, it'll spend 30 days here, 30 days here, and then 30 days in the middle. And so the last time we start at the middle of that line and then start bringing it back in. And so that way, the top is always warmer and the bottom's always cooler. And so in the middle has less airflow. And so that was just my way of, making sure we age it with the same amount of heat, ventilation. So I don't know how much of a difference it makes. That's just what we do. And the guys don't seem to, mind moving all that coffee. Because right now we've got 400 bags of coffee, and they'll move it out, move it in. They don't care. We stop and do a quick Pepsi break in the middle. And at the end of the day, I bring out Lipton cup of soup and all the Pepsi they can drink. And so some of those guys will drink 3 or 4 cup of soups. And they just, gorge themselves on it because that's a delicacy here. They're expensive. So the guys love it. And the Lackey is the Honduran brand. It comes with a little fork that you spin around and it makes a fork. And so they'll take the forks home with them. But no, I think I will do that. I'm going to send that stuff off and have it checked because the guy told me it had a lot more antioxidants than blueberries, which blueberries are, sort of a superfood. So I'd like to know, what the dietary things are and, if it's got anything good, bad, or if it, what the sugar content is. Because before we start drying it, a lot of times the sugar rate is 18%. That's a pretty good number. 18 to 21 is a really good number. And so I wonder how that all comes out in the wash, after it's dried and all.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a bit.
I think they're going to try to start selling it at that cafe, like I was telling you earlier today. I think they're going to see if it kind of catches on. Because like I said, for a tea drinker, you know how tea drink. No offense, Gary, but tea drinkers are. I just don't get into it, And I've tried numerous times, and I just cannot get into it for some reason. But my wife loves it, and that's why I had her try it. It's like, well, here, I'll get it. I'll buy it from Ashley. You just tell me. what it's like, and I'll share it with Ashley. So, but
Well, I think I have 5 varieties. I know I did a Perinema, a Sargi Moore, I did an Ekin 2, and a Limpira this year, and so I'll get Anna to pull me out some samples, and I'll bring them back in my suitcase when I come back on the 24th, and I'll get you some different ones and label them different, and you guys can try them and see, and then I'll send all that off to K-State too, and just see. I'll bring a pound of everything, so I'll get you guys a couple ounces of everything, and I'll contact K-State and see what kind of sampling they need, and we'll try the different ones and see, because they all do have somewhat different flavors. It's hard to judge something when you don't really like it, and I like the tea, okay, but it's not something I'm ever going to say, hey, But I also haven't experimented with making it, doing a sun tea out of it, or doing a coffee out of it, and I need to do more of that. But right now, all the girls are swamped. As soon as we start loading bags, they're going to start hand stitching them together. So everybody will be pretty busy. But I'm going to see if I can't do a party on Sunday, not this Sunday, but the next one, and see if I can't get the girls out here, and I'll buy pizza, and afterwards we'll do like a tea cupping and a couple of things that I want to get their opinions on. And I need to do worker pictures again this year. So I'm going to try to get everybody together on a Sunday afternoon. And if you feed them, they will come, especially pizza. Everybody loves pizza. So that's what I had for lunch and supper tonight. So.
Oh, wow.
We actually had pizza for supper too. I mean, they did. I didn't, but they had pizza for supper. Pizza on. Well, I'm on a weight loss diet, a weight loss drug, and pizza it sticks with me for days, and I just can't get rid of it. So I've tried to stay off of it as much as I can, but we're a Domino's family, so I think they know us by name.
In the town where the airport is, there's a Little Caesars, and so I take a taxi to where I park my car, and then I'll jump in my car and go to the grocery store, and then on my way out of town, I'll hit the Little Caesars and buy a couple pizzas. And today they had breadstick and pizza. And so that's what I had for supper. I sat on the porch and I ordered an extra thing of sauce. And so this will be my splurge day. But yeah, I eat, I'm fairly conscious about, when I went to the doctor the other day, I told Eli, I said, it's going to be 188. I'm going to weigh 188. And I'm trying to keep it at 185. And I can tell if I eat some, bunch of crap, you can tell it, and because I'm old or getting old, and I'm working out, doing the martial arts and stuff, and it's made a big difference. Because like last Saturday, Eli and I did 7.5 hours of consecutive classes with no break, no food, nothing, and had a blast. We started out at 6 o'clock. We did about 15 minutes of hot keto, and then we did forms for 45 minutes. And then I went in the back room and did forms while he did a kickboxing exercise class. And then we did our niece, which is Kabatan, which is a stick fighting class for an hour. Then we did Taekwondo for an hour. Then we did Jiu-Jitsu for 2.5 hours. Then we did mixed martial arts. And so we were there from 6 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon.
And you don't get any of those forms like confused. You don't be like, oops, sorry, I just used up keto. I shouldn't have. This is Taekwondo. My bad. I mean,
well, in Taekwondo, you're going to do a specific form. It's like Chungji or, right now I'm doing Wanyo. And so you're doing forms with the group, and, they're going to say, okay, we're going to do Wanyo, and then you'll Guk. And so a lot of times I'll get some of the forms when they repeat the same thing, if it's kick, double punch, then sometimes you'll get off track. But they're basically, the forms are to get it in your mind, kick and double punch and things like that. So you'll recognize when that opening is, and you can go and do kick, double punch, or you can follow it up or something else. Mixed martial arts, you can do anything you want to. You still can't, we're not in the level yet where we're hitting in the face. Where you get into the jiu-jitsu, it's more taking it to the ground. Versus, and there's very little kicks. You might do a kick on the initial takedown, but most of the time you're trying to throw them to the ground so you can do a mount, or my thing is I like doing the rear choke. I love the rear choke, man. If I get all to your neck, man, that's my favorite one. But the Taekwondo was good, but it was wearing my knee out. And then the first time I sparred, I got kicked in the knee, and it hurt. I had to end up getting a cortisone shot and sit out of class for a few days. And then it just got to where my knee was getting worse and worse. And then January, it just got to the point where I just would opt out. And you feel foolish. The whole other class is kicking and you stand there, but
Yeah.
you do what you have to do, and there's a couple guys that are older than me that, have bad knees, but I went from no knee problems to fixing to need a total knee replacement within a year. And I'm still not going to quit doing the class. I just absolutely love the class. But the jiu-jitsu, man, I love that. I like, and the Hapkido, which is pressure point and joint manipulation. Those classes are brutal. That guy's been doing Hapkido for 20 years, and he's done Taekwondo. He's a grandmaster in a couple different things. And these guys just have skill levels that are through the roof. And so it's been really cool learning from them. And then my instructor, he's a 9th degree black belt grandmaster. And he's off this weekend taking a 4-day jiu-jitsu course. They're just never going to quit learning. And if there's something out there that they haven't done, they want to do it. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun going to get somebody that's bigger, stronger. And you still it's still a level playing field, if
we've got a small group at work at Veterans United where I work here in Columbia, and we've got a small group that's a jiu-jitsu class group that every Wednesday and Friday that we roll the mats out, and I don't, mind you, but they roll the mats out and hit it the ground, and you can just see them. They come back, they leave with so much stress and everything of their work day, and come back just sweating from head to toe, like everything just is all hunky dory now. We choked some people out and made people tap and everything. We're doing, we're doing okay. But it's the same way, because they've got my loan officer that I work under is used to fight professionally, like in the octagon circle with it, and then he takes on. I think they have like 2 Mizzou University very high ranking wrestlers and stuff that wrestled during college and whatnot, and it's fun watching them come back and just going, wow, I took this guy to the ground, or wow, this guy almost had me tapping, but I was able to get out of it. And I'm just like, I just go to the gym, I just go and pump iron, that's all I do on there. But I'm hoping my knees don't get as bad as you, because that's my thing is leg press machine, and I'm pushing, I'm trying to get, I'm at 900 pounds now on the leg press, and I'm trying to get to that spot, but my gym has ran out of space on the leg press, so I don't know what I'm going to do. So I can't add any more weight to it. But no, it's fun. It's fun, that's for sure. But
yeah, and I'm not gonna right now. I was bench pressing like 135 a couple months ago, and now I do 70. I'm not trying to. I know at my age I'm just going to end up hurting myself. And so I started out at 100, and I just started moving up a little. And then, I could consistently do 135, however many reps, I had down for that day. But, I know you're supposed to be able to bench press your own weight, stuff like that. But I could hear stuff in my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't going to happen. Yeah. And then I talked to the guy at our dojo, and he was like, no, you need to do. So they've got me doing different things. I'm doing 70 pounds. And if I do 10 reps, the first rep you hold for 1 second, the second rep you hold for 2 seconds. So it's sort of like isokinetics or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
we're starting that next week.
Are you?
Yeah, so we've got a physical. Yeah, we've got a trainer that at the gym at Planet Fitness is where we go to, and they've got a trainer there that swears up and down with 2 weeks on very low weight but lots of reps, and then switch over to 2 weeks of or to 1 week of extremely high weight with very little reps on it, and kind of swapping back and forth, and it helps build up strength and whatnot. But um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
so
doing something similar to that. I'll have a regular regiment, and then about every 4 days I'll go. What they call it, go to fail.
yeah,
And so instead of doing 10 reps and then do something else and do something else, I'll just do my hammer curls until I just can't do another one.
right,
And then I'll do something that's not bicep. And then an hour later, I'll come back and I'll do I forget, the cross curl. I'll do that one to fail. And then,
yeah,
but, and so, yeah, just you take a break and, between each one, you take like a minute off and then do crunches, because crunches you can do a million of them, according to what type you're doing. But and so for my core, I'm doing like the scissor thing, and then
mhm,
you'll do the scissor thing like that, and there's a Russian twist, and so I want to get to where I can take a better punch, because that seems to be the majority. If you're in MMA and you're full contact MMA, it's that jaw punch that knocks a lot of people out, or it's an elbow to the head. But always a stomach kick is a good solid low, like a belly button stomach kick will take a guy out.
yeah.
And so I want to get core as tight as I can get it, and right now I can't see the six packs. I know they're there, but I can't see them yet. But, and so the same thing, I can definitely tell a difference, in my biceps, the vein is popping out a little more, but I'm not to the point where I want to run through the gym shirtless yet. But,
Yeah, it's never gonna
uh,
happen with me, so it's all right.
so,
I've just come to it. I was a very heavy person, and I'm coming down in weight. So I'm 60 pounds less since October. So
Oh wow.
so I've got a whole lot of extra skin and stuff just hanging everywhere. The doctor's like, yeah, you might never lose the skin. You might lose the skin. It might take a couple years. And I'm like, well, this is great. I'm going to get
yeah,
that beach bod, and I don't even want to look at myself.
yeah,
It's kind of like you though. I go, I know it's there. I can feel it. I
yeah.
can't see anything so on there, but
Well,
well, that's just
yeah,
cool.
I've got a skinnier frame, I guess, but I mean, God robbed me of being 6 foot. I'm like, I'm what is it? 5 foot 11 and a half, I'm like, come on, man, this much more, And so I asked the doc, I said, if you replace my knees, is there any way to like give me a half inch, And I said,
Just a
she's
little
like,
bit,
I don't
half an
know.
inch, quarter
You
inch
just
on
need
both
to you
sides.
need to
Yeah.
So
walk around barefoot more often so you can build up those calluses.
there
If
you
you
go.
get
Yeah,
a
that's
little bit more calluses on your feet, that might just be.
Yeah, I was
That's funny.
thinking two of those insoles,
And then
Dr.
sleep
Soles,
sleep upside down on a board so it stretches out your spine every night.
I might do that. Yeah. But no, she said, well, you just need one knee. So that would sort of, be counterproductive. So,
You might
but no,
still
it
hit
was,
6 foot if you
yeah,
just.
on my left stride. Yeah. No, I can tell you, man, it was a shock because I know I've got fluid buildup, and like last Saturday, it's a well-rounded training that we're doing. And so like, they're like, everybody's on your knees, and your opponent is going to be standing up, and you're going to be, because the day before we did on our back, so you've already been knocked down to the ground and he's fixing to attack you while you're on your back. And so this day we were on our knees. Man, it was killing my knee.
Oh,
And when I got
I
ready
can
to stand
imagine.
up, I couldn't stand up. It was swollen so bad that I couldn't straighten my leg out.
Oh,
And and so I knew it was getting bad, but I'm like, they've drained the fluid off, and then they'll literally drain all the fluid out, and then she unscrews the syringe, and then she'll put a syringe full of cortisone and pump it full of cortisone, and that's good for a couple of days. And you
yeah.
take it easy, and I can tell. But she's like, with your frame just standing there, that's not a muscle that's on the top of your leg where where what is it, your quad or whatever it's called. She's like, that's fluid, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And she's like, on the back, it's just this big bubble. I'm like, yeah, I know. And so, and she's like, you know, they drained it off, and then like the next day it was back. And so when they did my MRI, she's like, you know, I can literally see the trail from this back pouch that you have. I can see the trail of that fluid going, you know, to your, you know, to this spot. And she's like,
Wow.
that's where, you know, your big problem area is. And she's like, I could go in and do the, you know, the little osteo, whatever they do, and clean it up. But she said, in your condition, you got a 50-50 chance. It might make it better, it might make it worse. But she said, at the best case scenario, it's going to give you another year, and you still have to have a knee replacement. And because my meniscus is torn, and you've got an ACL, and then you've got I think it's a TCL. There's another something CL or something. And she's like, that's in bad shape. And she said, then your cartilage is worn down on this side. The other side looks good, but this side. And I'm like, and she said, does your knee pop a lot? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, it's because this is messed up. And I'm like, I said, so that we're not talking about a peel? And she's like, no. I'm like, well, but I'm 56.
Thanks, Doc.
I just turned 56. I was like, can I get a second opinion? And she said, oh, yeah, this is bad too. And so, but so she said, and my wife said, you know, I said, I could probably go next spring. But she said, yeah, I think you ought to do it while you're out for the summer. You know, the kids are out of school for the summer. And so we're going to look at it, but our insurance sucks. So we're going to have to pay for, you know, we got to figure out what it's going to cost first. And that'll be a big decision. As to when
the
I get
rehab's going to be a long time and everything. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'm thinking 7 days I'll be back, you know, something like that, you know.
Just walk it off.
You must have a lot of wheelchair ramps in Honduras that I don't know
about. I've never seen one here. But the good thing, you know,
it's getting late. I can't stick around for too long, but I wanted to ask Eric before he left. You said that you were a music person with a Christian bookstore in Fort Wayne?
Yeah, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
What
the
bookstore?
Anchor Room Bookshop.
Anchor Room? Are you serious?
Yeah, Paul and Pauline Holsapple.
Yeah. No, I frequently up there. I mean, I'm from Wabash, born and raised, so up there. So we would go up because you couldn't get a good Christian bookstore that had a coffee house or anything next to it unless you went to Fort Wayne. Up that direction. So, and not to mention, I'm a huge Comet fan. So Fort Wayne Comet fan, so I went to many games. So that's where we would go is to a Christian coffee house and bookstore, and then to the game, or vice versa.
So I was there from 91 to 96.
Okay.
And I was at the Anchor Room for that whole time. I had a full-time job as well, because that didn't pay anything. But it's what my passion was. That's what I wish I could just do all the time. And then the music buyer that I was working for, she and her husband were having a baby, and so she stepped down. And so I was their music buyer for maybe the last year. And then when I moved to Phoenix, I was a music buyer for a Christian bookstore here from 96 to 2001. So I loved that, but it wasn't anything that paid the bills. It's just something I did because I loved the job. But 2001 came and we wanted to start our family, and it's like, I can't do that on this income.
Yeah.
So, but so you'd been out to, now after I left, they did that move to the new building, which was just incredible. And I went back and visited, and that was so awesome. I love that.
I was after that move. I graduated in 97 from high school, and we really started going, friends and I and everything after then. So it was the new building.
You saw the new place,
Yeah, the new place. But, awesome. I love the Anchor Room. Oh, it was. I mean, I saw some good acts and stuff in there, and I mean, it was just. I mean, it was a good place to drink some good coffee, and everything else that direction. Yeah. So it was a great place. And I mean, it was a good place to hang out while we were waiting for the game to start or after the game was over or whatnot. And so, no, that's just kind of freaking when you saw that. I was like, it has to be someplace I'm sure I've been to up in Fort Wayne.
Well, so there's another, you talked about coffee in Fort Wayne. There's a group called Friends of the Third World, which is they are a nonprofit co-op. We want to help small communities, kind of fair trade shop
Sure. Okay.
So they do quite a lot of cool stuff, and they're working on like I started years ago when I started home roasting on a popcorn popper. I bought green beans from them
Okay.
because you could just buy a pound or 5 pounds, but they were training people how to be roasters. So you work here as a volunteer. We're going to
Hmm.
teach you how to do this. We're going to eventually be able to pay you, and now you're qualified to be able to get a job as a roaster because you really know what you're doing. And then we got to start over training somebody else.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool group. And I never knew about them when I lived there. It's all stuff I found out about once I was in Phoenix.
Well, I'm hoping.
But
I'm hoping. Cross my fingers. And I've mentioned this to Ashley in the past, but we have that the other Honduran coffee guy that just came into town here where I live at. Started a retreat center, bought an old golf course, and is turned it into a like a Christian retreat center. And he built his own roaster when he was in Colombia, and he used to roast for a church, like all their coffee for this church down there. It was like a men's Bible study group type thing down there. And he would go down to Honduras, but it was the other side of the country. Like you were saying, that more populated area, Ashley, I think you were saying that they would grab people from your guys's, the day laborer type people that would go over there.
Oh,
And
is it
he,
Copan?
it was that, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was I told you about it, and you said, oh, that's the other side of the country or something on there, where they don't care about quality as much on there over there. But he would get stuff from over there. I think they have a child center or children's Christian center or something on that side that they help sponsor with it. But since then he's retired from that, and he's moved up here and done this. And I told him that I love roasting coffee, and I wanted to learn on a big, because I've never done a big machine before. I've never seen a big machine being used except for
yeah,
in videos. And he said when he got it up and going, he was wanting to do it again on there. And I was like, I know this Honduran farmer that we can
yeah,
maybe get some stuff off of, instead of going to that other side of the country. I know somebody that we can help out on this
with the
side,
good stuff.
the good stuff. And so kind of go that direction. But I know that he's talking about getting something from Haiti. And I just ran into a missionary that I knew from church camp days, because I used to be a church camp manager. That his family is it's generational family from Uganda, and he wants to help support Ugandan school over there. And he was trying to figure out about importing and all this kind of stuff. And I talked to this gentleman that was that way, that just moved up here for that retreat center, and he's like, you know what, if you want to sponsor somebody or help them out, don't try to import the stuff from local farmers around the school, because you're never going to make any money to send back. That way, just buy beans, roast it, sell it, and send the money over that direction. It's the only way you're really going to make any money, to send it to them, without being. And so I'm really kind of hoping that kind of kicks off when he gets that roaster going, because I think it'd be fun. I told him I wanted to sit at the master's feet, is what I said. You can't learn from the master, because it kind of intimidates me to have 25 pounds at a time. It
Yeah,
intimidates me doing 8 ounces at a time. Freaking, I'm going to screw it up. But
Well,
no,
like with my Mario Hipe and my Bourbon, those were such nice coffees. For a couple of years, I just roasted them in the little Hucky, because I wasn't, I was trying to figure it out, and I was scared to
yeah,
put them in the big machine. But well,
and
let's.
the Hucky has to be over a burner, right? I mean, it doesn't have its own built-in heat
Yeah,
source. You put it over a flame,
no, it does.
or
Yeah,
oh,
it
it does
does.
it. Okay,
Yeah, I'll try to remember. The lab and all is open. I'll try to snap a couple pictures of it.
okay,
Uh, but yeah, it's got like a little infrared burner under it, and it's got great gas control and air control. I put a little
okay,
rheostat on the fan, and it's just so nice. Yeah, it's got a big design flaw in the neck where the coffee feeds in. The guy doesn't have enough angle in it, and so like on my Hucky I've got here, I have a business card I have to drop in there and block off so that it doesn't suck it towards the fan. And then when you're
oh,
done, I just violently shake it just a little bit, and there's always green beans that come out and half roasted beans that come out. So that's just, you're going to pick a few beans out of every batch. That's just the way the machine is. But other than that, man, it's got great control. But it's like $2,500, something like that, for the for the whole all the little accessories and everything. But I like them. I hated it the first year. It was a long learning curve from not knowing anything about roasting to try to get that thing to work. And then now I have 3 of them, and so I've gotten used to them. So it's and I'm going to bring the second one down here. I want to set up a lab where the little farmers here can come in and learn to roast, and then be able to do their own sample roasting. And
That'd
so
be awesome.
in my coffee shop that I'm building, I'm going to have a little corner where there's a little roaster, and that roaster will roast the coffee for the coffee shop. But then they can use it whenever they want to do their own little cupping. But I know that when the coffee container comes, I'm going to deliver some to Island, Kentucky. Then I'm going to go by Ranger Dan. I forgot what town he's in. I'm going to go by. So I'll be
Ranger Dan that was just on here tonight.
Yeah, he's an ex-Army Ranger.
Yeah, Rensselaer is where he's at. So northern Indiana. Yeah.
So I'm gonna make some, like, a little coffee tour. I'm gonna load up my truck and deliver some to Island, Kentucky, and then from there I'm going to Ranger Dan's, and so I'm gonna hit a couple states and stay like 2 days. So I'm gonna try to set up a couple little meets, and I'll stay in a hotel and see if they'll let us have a room, And so I'll bring a hucky or a fresh roast or something with me. So, I'm going to see if we can't set up some times where, we can just sort of meet somewhere and, be there Saturday and Sunday or something, and just sort of fart around, roast coffee, and shoot the breeze, do a podcast, eat some chicken or something. I don't know. Just do something. We'll order pizza for Bill,
There you go.
and so
the one that won't eat it. That's good enough.
Pizza and tea.
There you go. Pizza and tea. Exactly.
Get his wife all hopped up on tea and watch her. Yeah. But no, awesome. I've wanted to do that for a couple of years, and I had it set up for 2020, and then COVID hit and we sort of canceled everything. But I want to try to do a couple of things like that, and just sort of get to know guys a lot better, and see if we can't make it a yearly thing where we get together. And because how close are you two guys from each other?
Well, he's in Phoenix. So.
Oh, I forgot. You're in Phoenix. I'm about to drive a long ways to get to you. But I've got guys up in California. Jeannie Levy buys a lot of my coffee, and she buys a lot of Anna's coffee, and she's somewhere in California. And so now we've sold coffee to all 50 states. So it'd just be a matter of, and you know what? Phoenix is Phoenix and Tucson, you can get fairly good tickets. Southwest, and a lot of guys flying there fairly cheap. So it's definitely not out of the question to go up there. I've got an uncle in Tucson. Well, he passed, but all of his family, all my cousins' stuff, I got a half a dozen cousins around the Tucson area. So no, it'd definitely be something I'd consider, and just do a little coffee tour or something. And especially if there's, anything coffee related, if there's some kind of expo or something going on, definitely get together and just have a coffee weekend or something. But no, it'd be fun to try to do as many of those things as possible. While I've got some free time during the summer, because the idea is to do a lot more coffee stuff. A lot more riding around and do some fundraising. So I'm going to Texas here in a couple of weeks and doing 2 churches there, trying to raise money for the library, getting some Sunday school classes to fund the librarians. I'm wanting a librarian 6 days a week, and I'm trying to get some teachers. I want 3 different teachers to each do 1 day a week after school to do tutoring. And so I've got a couple of Mac computers that I'm going to install up in the library so that we can do tutoring for the kids, and just have them come in 1 day a week and do tutoring. After they get through teaching, they'll come in and do tutoring. I don't know what I'm going to meet with them this next week and see what they would charge, and if, sort of get that ball rolling. And then I'm gonna ask some Sunday school teachers just for Sunday school class, everybody donates $3. If they could all do $3 a month or $3 a week, I'll be able to tell them how many days, that would fund, and just try to get that ball rolling. And again, if you guys are doing some kind of fundraiser, don't hesitate to ask. Say, can you give us 20 pounds of green coffee or something, and I can supply the green coffee, and you guys can roast it, or I can send it to you roasted, as easy as anything. Because it might take you a couple of hours to roast it, where I can roast it pretty quick.
Yeah.
And just stick 20 pounds in a box, and you guys bag it up. And if you order coffee, if you want me to print out labels or something, and I was telling Bill, we just did an inventory, and I bet I've probably got 40 bags that are bags we used to use, and they're 6-ounce bags where now we only do 8-ounce. I'm going to throw all that stuff in a box and ship it over to them.
With a coffee plant. Don't forget a coffee
plant. Yeah. I'm bringing back some Anna. I think Anna has me some seeds.
Okay.
And so I'm going to bring back some seeds and hopefully have something you might be able to try to plant. And
I might have to get Garrett to raise it down in Phoenix.
Well,
probably
it probably have to be inside though, because come summertime, everything's going to die.
Yeah, it's true.
But it'd be fun to have inside. I mean, I don't think it'd harvest, but it'd be a cool plant to be able to see.
I sell mortgages for a living, and I see people all the time. They're like, we sell a lot of homes to veterans and stuff down in the Phoenix and down in Arizona. And they always go, look, this is the house that I'm looking at putting an offer in, Bill. And they'll send me pictures, and I'll look and go, my God, what happened to your lawn? And then realize, oh wait, I'm talking about Arizona. Rocks is lawn.
That is the lawn, yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen some very beautiful stones, stone lawns and whatnot, like all patterns, but it's like, good grief, I'm not used to seeing all that rock.
But boy, just having a lawn full of grass, that gets a lot of water.
I can imagine. Good grief. Well, brothers, I'd hate to say goodbye, but I got to get up in like 4.5 hours. So,
yeah, I'm going to get up at 5. So, yeah, I think it's 11:30 here now. So,
yeah. Well, you gained an hour going back, lucky duck. So,
yeah, I guess I did. But our plane was so late that by the time I got to the farm, everybody was gone. So I didn't really get to meet with anybody today. So tomorrow they'll be here. Some of them will be here at 6. Santos will come down from the project at 6. And I'll fix some breakfast. And so we'll have an hour before the rest of the workers get here. And then we'll meet from 7 to 8 and start figuring out what we're going to do. I got to put all the lots together.
What's his farm? He has a farm too, right? Is his the Osmonds?
No, he is Finca Santos.
Okay.
And my guy Bahidio has Finca Osmond. And then Anna is Finca Anna. Pedro is going to be Finca Pedro. Santiago will be Santiago. Melvin is Melvin. And I can't remember who the guy is that we bought the Sargi Moore from, but I actually bought that from him. So I won't label it under his thing. I'll just use it in a blend or something. But
Billy's Bean Barn is taken. So you can't name anything that.
There you go. Yeah. I don't even know what that would be in Spanish. I'll have to figure that out and I'll let you know. It would be cool. Billy would be the same. And Bean's, Bean Bonanza would be like Barato would be like discount or something. So we could come up with some B's in Spanish. I'll work on it and let you know.
There you go.
Well, man, if y'all need something, especially if you're doing something for a nonprofit or fundraiser, let me know and I'll help you guys out. Any way we can.
Okay.
But yeah, we got a color printer, so I just do, my labels aren't anything fancy, but I just do basic labels. And man, I've had the machine for 6 months and literally haven't filled it up with ink yet. Those ink tank printers are really economical. And then I've got a laser printer. So when I do just plain black labels, I just do them with a laser printer. And then when I do the colored labels, I do them with the other. And
so Shaquille O'Neal was right when he said it takes forever to use those things, right? Is it the Epson inkjet or ink well things or whatever?
Yeah, I've got a Canon 2050 and a Canon 5000. The 2050 I have here on the farm, and then I got the 5000, and it's an ink tank printer, and they're just really great printers. And I've got an HP that's a laser printer, and the same thing. I use maybe 3 things a toner a year. We sell, I don't know, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 pounds of coffee a year, something like that. And so that's, how many labels we use. But everything else I stamp. $35, you can get a 3-inch stamp. And so I use the stamps and hand stamp every bag myself. And so each bag has 3 different stamps on it. So it takes a while, but I like the way it looks. And so
looks
I'm going
good.
to keep doing it. If I screw up a stamp, that's when I use the label. I got 3x3 and 4x4 labels, and so if the stamp gets screwed up, I'll put a label over it with the same logo on it. Yeah. Well, guys, I got to return a few emails, and there was a bunch of questions that came in when we first started, and eventually they logged out because we kept talking about something else. So I'm gonna at least answer them on Messenger tonight before I go to bed.
All right. Yeah,
All right,
Garrett,
man.
look me up on Facebook. I'll be there.
Yeah,
so
you got it.
all right.
If you can't find them, I'll help you guys get hooked up.
Okay.
But you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
You betcha. See you guys.
Bye.
All right. Night.